music's got an upgrade since I've been here.
It's all over the place lately. I feel like sometimes it's like hard rock, sometimes it's like still hip hop adjacent.
My golf shows for classical music for my golf shows.
Has there been classical music?
Jordan's got some crazy music.
That would fit the wealthier people in golf, I suppose. Just a bunch of sniveling boys with their pinkies up.
Yeah, highbrow.
Honestly, don't even know if I could do my Eric Lindquist impression again now. Like, I don't even know if I have it in me.
I'm just going to bring you on the golf show, Spags. Like, Eric thinks he's safe there, and then you can go up.
DJ Eric Lindquist here on the ones and twos.
Oh, wait. What's the bad beats?
Oh, I updated it, I think.
How do you say that?
Oh, Goga and Okongwu. Yeah, they do sound like Godzilla monsters when you, in that context. Okongwu.
Goody.
Oh, yeah.
Stare at what?
You trying to get my brain into a pretzel before the show? They do.
They do move. They move at different paces though, which I find.
Yeah, I can't. I'm gonna have to
I wouldn't
talk
say
to someone
alarming.
about that. We can't be having that.
Troubling, at least a little troubling. It should be like one of those old internet sites where like a monster would pop out and scare somebody like after a certain time period, where you think you're staring at a peaceful painting and then just like.
I hate those. Yes.
What was that?
You.
Ah.
Everybody, happy Thursday. Welcome to this edition of the Tip-Off Show, the show that sets the stage for all the most important news in tonight's 7-game NBA slate, as well as daily fantasy plays and bets. I am Kayla Knierim. Joining me today, we've got Ben Rasa, Chris Spags. Ben, big day for you. Day one of the Masters. How are we doing?
Well, I still was able to make the show, so it is not a total disaster, but it's playing tough out there. I think everyone knew these greens were going to be baked out, and it's not surprising to see. It's a torture chamber right now. So I've got some problems. I think everyone's lineup has some problems. It's a long golf tournament, though. That's what I keep telling myself, at least.
It's courageous of you to come on the show, do it here, even with your broken legs from your bookies already recognizing that things aren't going to work out for you. So that's really a testament to the courage we all bring to the tip-off show every day.
It's well said, Spags. Yeah, it could be problematic, but you know what? In golf, you are legitimately never out of it. That's the one good thing about PGA DFS. It's pretty lawless. So we're going to battle back. I'm going to get some NBA mojo, and we're going to turn the tide.
There we go. I like that attitude. Really quick, though, who do you have to win?
So Jason Day was the guy that I was really high on, and he is, spoiler alert, not going to be winning the tournament. We'll see. There's a long way to go. I think there's a couple guys. Rom got in, Xander got in at pretty good scores today. They're kind of just in the middle of the pack. I think they could be interesting to make a move tomorrow. All
right. We will be excited to see how the tournament plays out. And don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel for countless hours of content on the NBA, MLB, NHL, PGA, MMA, NASCAR, and every other sport that's in season. I know it's been a little wonky. Sometimes we're at 3, sometimes we're at 4, sometimes we're at 4:30. We just like keeping on your toes. So it's important to subscribe so you always know when the tip-off's going to be. We also want to talk about our sponsor, No House Advantage, who is taking a different spin on daily fantasy sports by offering player prop contests across the NBA, MLB, NFL, PGA for cash prizes. This exclusively peer-to-peer fantasy sports platform levels the playing field and makes it easier for you to win real cash compared with your traditional DFS sites. The best part is you can join for free today. Just download the No House Advantage app and use promo code Awesemo to receive a first match deposit bonus of up to $20. Beat your friends, not the house. Win big with player props today. All right, let's kick things off with our bad beats. Yesterday's NBA slate was a good day for value big men like Goga and Okongwu, but there were some popular landmines elsewhere. Guys, how did you both fare? Spags, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I think the Goga part was good. And poor Kayla didn't know these guys before the show. And then we basically said they sound like Godzilla monsters. And I think that's the best way to look at it. But two big men who I guess also physically resemble Godzilla monsters. So perfect promo for HBO Max having that Godzilla versus Kong movie, which I fell asleep on last weekend. So that's my review. But I would say overall that it was an interesting slate. I felt good about getting Okongwu right. I feel like people were all very into Goga Batadze, given the fact the Pacers big men were out. But for me, getting to both him and Okongwu opened up some things, opened up just enough salary for the Pelicans to lose by 30 and kill the rest of my lineup. So that's the bad beat. It's always tough when you get the value right and the guys that you're paying up for that you have some degree of trust in who've put up big numbers recently just don't show up because they get completely smoked by the Nets. That was the case for me last night. Just had a ton of those guys and couldn't quite dig out, even though the big men, again, proud of those boys for showing up. And Okongwu, a fellow USC Trojan, so I hope he fights on and enjoys his day.
You know, I'm not a big monster movie guy, but every time that movie is brought up, that must be the worst movie ever because I've not seen one person say anything besides it's horrendous. But for me, I was in Masters mode last night, so I didn't do much. I did see the Mavericks go down early, and I took a position on them thinking that, you know, on the road against a bad Houston team that they could claw back. That's a really disappointing loss for a team. You know, it's not dire, it's one game, but I was really surprised to see Dallas not find a way to win that game. They have a quick turnaround tonight. They're back at home against a wounded Bucks team, but it wasn't a bad beat. It was just Dallas didn't have it last night and they dropped the game that they certainly should not have.
All right, let's head over to our key news. There's always a lot to get to. So first up, we've got Giannis, who is doubtful today in what seemed like a marquee matchup versus Luka Doncic in Dallas. Spags, if he's out, who looks like crucial plays for Milwaukee.
I think to me, the guy that really stands out is Chris Middleton here. Bobby Portis going to be heavily owned on all the sites today. That's reasonable too. I really have no issue there as long as he's going to be starting. That would be the assumption going in. So just make sure that's the case for him. But he's a pretty easy play to talk about. We know that he fills in for Giannis pretty well. The rate data for him also looks pretty good. Gets up to 21% usage rate, almost a 19% rebound rate. All that bodes well for Portis being a good chalk play today. But I do think I'm going to cast my lot a little bit more with Chris Middleton today. I feel like in the situation, he's going to be a bit higher owned, but I think projection wise, you're going to be one of the games where Giannis was out. Drew Holiday showed gigantic upside, had a ton of assists. I think was just shy of 70 fantasy points in that one. And I think people may be a little more into Drew Holiday just because of the fact that They're going to see that game happening most recently. They're going to keep chasing that. And Drew's a fine play today. I'll still have some of him, but I do think Middleton intrigues me just a little bit more just because he hasn't quite shown a gigantic ceiling game in some of these most recent runs without Giannis. So you're going to have a lot of these guys today, but I do think for me, just getting a little bit of Middleton or a little bit more than the field of Middleton and maybe coming in just with the field on Drew Holiday seems like the approach that I'd want the most.
Yeah, I mean, these are the guys that clearly are going to pick up the slack, clearly going to get the usage bumps. You mentioned Holiday. There is an element kind of scoreboard chasing there. I do think he's going to have every opportunity. The minutes will be secure, and this is a competitive game against the Dallas team that I just talked about, who did not look good last night. And we'll see who's out there and what Luka can do tonight. But yeah, I mean, Drew Holiday is certainly going to be a popular target, but the price, I don't think you're screaming a ton of value there. He makes sense, and I have no problem with it. But Middleton, even though, I don't know, I feel like a lot of people really don't like Chris Middleton, but that's another story for another time. And some of that's probably warranted with some of the lulls. But yeah, you're getting a slight discount in price. He's also going to be relied on heavily. And for this Milwaukee team, I mean, it's not going to be one guy clearly with Giannis. These are the two. And then you've got Portis that are going to have to make up that usage. So I'm with you, Spags. I think I'd kind of lean that. But honestly, if you wanted to go Holiday, there's an obvious reason why he's going to garner some interest tonight.
In that same game, Dr. Ben's arch nemesis, Kristaps Porzingis, which we'll get to that later on in the show, is expected out on a back-to-back while Maxi Kleber is currently questionable. Ben, how do the Mavs look in this potential high-scoring spot versus the Bucks?
So, yeah, I mean, of course, they're down, a key guy there, but they still have Luka. And really, I mean, that team goes as he goes. And he hasn't been good in back-to-backs. Recently, when you look at the splits, it's been down, but it's still something that I'm not overly concerned about. They are a small favorite at home tonight. You get a 226.5 total. But looking at like who else may get the bump, I don't think it's not a huge slate by any stretch, but it's also not something where I see a ton of obvious, buy low spots for this Mavericks team. So, like I said, you've got Luka, and he's always going to be in the conversation. Kleber, of course, and then you got like Richardson, Hardaway, and peripherals. But Spags, do you really see anything here outside of the obvious names? And you're paying, Luka's almost 11K. So there's a massive opportunity cost if that's where you go.
I think Luka looks good. I think they're, the deeper dive guys have talked a lot. Really, all the shows have talked a lot about Luka's rates not changing that much, whether Porzingis is on the court or off. And actually gets a little bit worse in terms of the assist rate when Porzingis is off because you lose one quality shooter who can knock it down a little more than the guys filling in. But I still believe a lot in Luka. And it's really more to me about the ceiling than it is sort of the median rates being the same for the most part, because in this spot against Milwaukee, you're going to have to score a lot. He's probably going to walk into some easy rebounds a little more than he probably normally would because of no Giannis out there, assuming that he is going to be out today. And then also, the assist upside has to be there too. He's going to have to set up these guys to knock down some threes because there's a lot of scorers on Milwaukee's side to keep up with. So to me in this spot, I do think Luka looks better than he might normally in a spot without Porzingis, but I agree that none of these guys jump out super meaningfully. If Kleber's out, you could sort of make the case for a Nicola Melli. I think that's not the craziest thing in the world to go there. His price point under 4K on DraftKings, I think that's reasonable. Josh Richardson too, I think would gain in some appeal. He's a guy that looks okay to me right now. I think would look a little better if we know that Kleber's out, and then certainly would look good now, assuming that Porzingis is also going to be out today. But I think Luka's really the one you want here. If you get some of the other guys, that's fine. But it's probably, to me, a spot where you don't want maybe one other Mav besides Luka today.
Toronto will be without Kyle Lowry, Fred VanVleet, and the suspended DeAndre Bembry. Spags, is Malachi Flynn a man to trust with his price skyrocketing across the DFS industry?
Yeah, I think you have to play Flynn a good amount today, and it's tough because his price is coming up. His FanDuel price is outrageous. His DraftKings price is still pretty lofty for a guy. He won the year, still not the best permanent producer, only at about 0.74 fantasy points per minute, which not a great mark. He has been getting some blocks and steals each game recently that I think have been making the fantasy totals look a bit more palatable. The issue, though, is that there's just nobody else who could play point guard for Toronto that's going to be available for them. It looks like you don't have Paul Watson, who's a guy who could play. You don't have Lowry, obviously. You don't have VanVleet. You have Bembry suspended for this spot. So I think Flynn has to play a good amount of minutes. Awesemo has been for 34. I think you give Malachi Flynn 34. He's probably not as great of a play as he was the other day, and definitely not as great as he was when I guess people were playing him. And it didn't seem like the best move because he wasn't starting, but the minutes ended up being more secure. Both days, I think he was a better play just because he was cheaper, but you still, I think, have to have some exposure today just because Flynn's going to be on the court a lot, and maybe a little more love for guys like Pascal Siakam, especially if you're not playing Flynn.
Yeah, there is like basically no scenario where they can pull him off. They just don't have the bodies. And I know the price has come up a little bit, but the floor is so secure in that regard. Now, it's a weird situation because you look at that, But you just brought this up. He is living dangerously with the stocks. He's got 5, 7, and 3 over the last 4 games. He's really racking up, those. And I don't know how sustainable something like that is. He's not a high usage guy. The minutes, though, even at a $4,700 price tag, I think do keep him firmly in play. It's a pretty easy pay down spot. And you just know that it's so secure. So if he can continue to get a couple blocks, a couple steals, of course, you're going to get there. And even not, he chips in with a handful of rebounds, a handful of assists. I feel pretty good about it. But yeah, the price is starting to narrow that path.
Jeremy Grant will be out for Detroit with Mason Plumlee questionable due to concussion protocols. Ben, is anyone a priority play in a great matchup versus Sacramento?
I really don't like this is a side note. I don't like the Pistons. They're just a team that just pisses me off. They're just complicated. They have too many guys. They made trades, and there's just a lot of overlap within the team. So you look at guys with these wings with Bay and Jackson, guys like that. Certainly Stewart as a big, but it's just very hard for me to prioritize. I think these guys make worthwhile shots. Even someone like Killian Hayes, if you want to pay all the way down. And I just don't know, though, if I would build around these guys. So if you have a lineup and you need someone at one of these price points for Detroit, I don't mind it. In a game you mentioned, the Kings are not exactly world beaters, 224.5 total. The Pistons are 7.5 point dogs on the road, but I just look and I don't see anything that really screams priority from the Pistons.
I think for me, the one thing that jumps out is the fact this is only a 7-point spread on the road for Detroit. And I think that does, to me, say that there's going to be some production here from somebody. And I feel it gives me a little more confidence. I'm not sure that I'd be ready to pencil Detroit in as my good dog, but I do think the fact this isn't a 10-point spread. Sacramento, not a great team by any stretch, but they are a team that can certainly put a hurting on teams that aren't good. And Detroit is a team that definitely is not good. And going to be a little bit worse without Jeremy Grant losing his usage as well as some quality defense. He's a rangy guy who, even if he hasn't the same block upside he had in Denver, same rebound upside, he's still a guy that does make it tougher on the opposing team. But I do think the main thing I'm looking out for here is if Plumlee ends up out, it's going to be, to me, a day worth a lot of Isaiah Stewart. He's a really good value play on DraftKings. I think you could project him right now with 23 minutes from Awesemo to be a good enough play to get in there. I think if you have Plumlee out, you're going to see him take a pretty big jump up. Isaiah Stewart, Killian Hayes too, I think at 3,200, intriguing to me. He definitely just showed, I think the last game that he played, a pretty good upside. I don't know that I believe in that night in and night out, but at 3,200, I'd probably want to take that stab a little more. And I do think the guys that you have to hope could pick up some of the upside here. Josh Jackson's been a high usage player. I think he's somebody who could benefit. Saddiq Bey, I have a little less confidence that he's going to be a high usage guy because he does kind of go in and out. And if Josh Jackson takes some shots away, Isaiah Stewart takes some more looks away if we end up with Plumlee out. There are some ways I think that maybe Saddiq Bey doesn't get there, but I think this is the spot. Josh Jackson under 5K, has 40, 50 fantasy point upside. It wouldn't be crazy here. Still a crowded Detroit team though, with guys like Diallo, Corey Joseph taking minutes, Saban Lee. But I do think I'd be willing to take a good amount of Josh Jackson in the hopes that he unlocks that upside that we know he has. He just hasn't had a chance to show it as much because Detroit has a lot of guys who like to get up shots.
Andre Drummond is probable to play today in a matchup against a tough Miami squad in a low total game. Spags, how does he affect things for the Lakers?
I think he looks like a pretty good play today on DraftKings, and it's sort of tough to know what his minutes will be. It did seem like he was trending towards, I think, around a 26-minute projection in that game that he ended up getting hurt in versus Milwaukee, his Lakers debut. That's what Awesemo has been for today, too, which I think seems like a good number for him at this price point where he didn't show any less usage, didn't show any less rebounding in that spot against Milwaukee. Wasn't, particularly productive because it's Milwaukee, but going against Miami, a slower team who also has not been shooting fantastically on the year, I think does offer him some rebound looks. So I think he makes it tougher to justify any Marc Gasol who's been playing well. I think it's tougher to justify Montrezl Harrell, even though he's still going to be getting about 25 minutes according to Awesemo's projections. But I think Drummond becomes more of a priority play. Hurts Kuzma enough, I think, to knock him down too. And I think really the only other playable Lakers player would be for me, Dennis Schroeder, just because he's a guy who's not going to get squeezed by quite as much by Drummond, kind of hogging up that space and grabbing a lot of boards.
Yeah, this is a tough situation, and it's certainly not an appealing game. It's that 205 total. The Heat are a sizable favorite at home, and Drummond does kind of just add another body to that front court. And against a Heat front court, they're first in the league in points allowed in the paint, only 40. They're a really strong defense on the interior. Certainly the boards could be up. You mentioned, there could be a lot of missed shots in a game like this, but I don't see any of these bigs for the Lakers having major success inside against the Heat. And Drummond's presence, for Montrez, certainly for Gasol and even Kuzma to an extent, it is going to mitigate that. Schroeder, in the backcourt, I think can still get there, but it's not the best situation. So if I had to play one of them, it actually would be Drummond. But I also think that, there are enough other bigs across the slate where the Lakers are another team that I'm not really high on.
Larry Nance and Jared Allen remain out for Cleveland in a battle of the bad versus OKC. Ugh, it hurts. Ben, do any of Cleveland's bigs appeal to you with these two out once again?
So we've talked about Hartenstein before, and this is even Wade to some extent, and this is the battle of these are bad teams. I'm sorry to say that. But you look at it, I think you do have options. All of these guys are pretty reasonably priced. The major usage for Cleveland, of course, is in that backcourt. Garland, who I own some top shots of, so keep it going, Darius. And then we've got Sexton as well. But I do think you could look to these guys against an Oklahoma City team that's certainly not the bet. They're actually a 4-point favorite on the road here, 218.5 total for the Cavs. So you have some options there in the front court. And I think really for two bad teams, it's a pretty decent fantasy game. There are some targets here, and the price is pretty appealing across the board for the Cavs. So I wouldn't mind getting some exposure to this Cavaliers team tonight.
Yeah, I think Isaiah Hartenstein jumps out to me. The fact that he got to 27 minutes last game, I think bodes well for him, just being able to play more minutes. And he also had some foul trouble. It didn't quite get him to the point where he was unplayable, but ended the game with 5 fouls. I think, for the most part was cruising towards, if he just had one bad call against him, it could have been a much less of a minutes run. But he's so productive when he's out there that I think I tend to want to believe that he can hang in and be productive against an Oklahoma City team that does have a lot of big men. So you think maybe he gets a few more minutes over Dean Wade, who's been playing a ton recently, but is kind of a pushover inside. I do think Hartenstein brings some size, brings some ruggedness that he probably needs going against guys like, like Moses Brown and Tony Bradley. But I do think Kevin Love too, a guy who's worth mentioning here, played 26 minutes last time out. Awesemo has been playing 27 today. I think that's conservative too. Doesn't seem crazy to imagine that Kevin Love could get to 30 minutes if things are rolling right for him. So in this spot too, I think Hartenstein and Love are probably the guys who appeal the most to me. But if I got some in Dean Wade and Taurean Prince, it's not a bad spot. And as Ben mentioned, it's a kind of a shockingly high total for Cleveland, where they are actually projected to win on the road because Oklahoma City, sorry, Kayla, just apparently worse than the Cavs, which says it all, I suppose.
We're in a rebuilding phase. Thank you. All right.
They're very good at being bad. That's a skill in its own right.
Kills me. Mike Conley is expected out for Utah on a back-to-back versus the generous defense of Portland, while Jordan Clarkson was downgraded to doubtful before the show. Spags, does anyone stand out for the Jazz with Conley likely resting and Clarkson perhaps out as well?
I think Donovan Mitchell takes the biggest jump up to me just on the assumption that you're going to see a few more minutes for him. Awesemo right now is in for 34. It's going to be a little more productive too. It normally has about a 32.5% usage rate, gets up to 33.5. And for somebody like Mitchell, those numbers can matter because Portland just gives up such production. We saw the other day, I think we're going to talk about these guys coming up in a little bit, but the Clippers, both had Paul George and Kawhi Leonard having outlier days against Portland because they're that bad. If you have Donovan Mitchell, who seals so many possessions away from really everybody else on the floor, if he can do even what those guys are doing, but consolidated to just him, I think that he's going to have a chance here, an outlier day. Obviously, it's the Jazz. They can run away with this game. They can spread the production around. You can see Joe Ingles have an outlier effort, Bojan Bogdanovic have an outlier effort. It's not crazy, but I do think when you have Conley and Clarkson out, if we're going to assume that Conley rests as he has all season long in the back half of a back-to-back, I do think this is a spot here where Mitchell could have a really big day, and really the rest of the Jazz are fine, but Mitchell being a guy who breaks the slate is not a crazy idea to me today.
I'm right in line with it. Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the peripherals on Utah. I wouldn't fault anyone if they wanted to go there. I just think, there's multiple guys and you're kind of, really small edges. Donovan Mitchell is going to pick up some usage. He's going to be out there. He took 30. I mean, that game was in overtime, but anytime you see someone who can take 35 shots in a game, the price is reasonable, 8,600 against the Portland defense. This is a competitive game. So for Utah to win this game, and they are a 6-point favorite at home, 233 total, though that says it all. And without Conley, who, as you mentioned, on a back-to-back, I don't think there's much of a chance that he's playing. And if Clarkson's also out, Mitchell is going to have free reign to really lead this team and be very, very aggressive. So he's someone I think is worth paying up for. The minutes will be there, the usage will be there, and the matchup is there. So I really don't see many red flags with the leader for Utah tonight.
All right, and that will do it for our key news. I think this is a new record. We got through that in 20 minutes.
Easy.
Amazing.
That one yesterday was a marathon, but we try to cover it as best we can for the people. That's our sacrifice. And sometimes we have to do hour-long segments on injury news.
It is what it is. We have two incredible promos running right now for the Masters and the MLB, which you can find at awesemo.com/promos. The Masters, of course, teed off today, so make sure to grab 2 months of Awesemo Plus Golf for the price of one with promo code Dustin. That's 60 days of Awesemo Plus Golf for $29.95, which includes projections, ownership projections, our top golfers tool, lineup builder, and more. This deal will also cover the PGA Championship in May, so you're getting 2 full major slates and is valid through April 11th. Our MLB promo ends Friday, April 9th, and also gives you full access to Awesemo Plus MLB for your first 9 days for only $9 when you use promo code STARTING9. That's starting with the numeral 9. We've already had some big MLB winners in the first week of the season, so now is the time to join in on the fun. Stop guessing, start winning. Join Awesemo Plus today. Heading over to our one-on-one in these battles between stars, which player would you rather have in NBA DFS or prop bets tonight? We've got Luka Doncic, who doesn't see a huge rate increase in games without Kristaps Porzingis, but he does stand to see more possessions versus high-scoring Milwaukee. Drew Holiday is much cheaper than Luka, but could have a big upside with Giannis doubtful to play. Ben, who wins in this one-on-one, Luka or Drew?
So, I mean, there is context. Certainly, if you have the money, you can go up to Luka. You are going to pay an opportunity cost. If not, the thing about, we were talking about this earlier, Spags, Milwaukee has other options that really could contribute tonight, particularly Middleton. So I don't think it's just a guarantee with Giannis out that it's going to be Drew Holiday season. Now, I do think can have an effective game, but Luka is, of course, the complete leader of this team. And on a slate, more and more value, I think, will open up. So although you're going to pay all the way up here, I don't think it's a massive opportunity cost. And I think Dallas at home, a competitive game, there are other ways that you can capture some production for Milwaukee. Whereas if you're going to Dallas, I feel like you just have to pay up all the way for Luka and capture it like that. So even though he's very expensive, I think that, when looking at our ownership here, both of these guys, going to be popular, but nothing extreme. They're in the same range, hovering, plus or minus a couple off 20%. I'll say Luka in this one-on-one matchup.
Yeah, I think Luka's an interesting play. I think to me, the way that I would try to handle this, and I would prefer Luka just on a raw projection basis, and I think on a value basis, I think he looks still a little bit better to me than Drew, even though Drew's cheaper. Drew just looks a bit overpriced I think he's priced more for the ceiling than he is for the median projection. But I do think that there are some worlds here where you could play Drew in lineups where you're not playing Luka in the hopes that maybe Luka underperforms. And I think to me, maybe the move is to try to set up some sort of groups in Fantasy Cruncher where you're getting Drew if you're playing 2 Mavs who aren't Luka. And I think that could be the way to try to capture it, because in that spot, I think it's not crazy to say that like Drew has the big day. Maybe correlate that with Chris Middleton too, where you're maybe not playing Drew along Middleton. I don't think that you have to do that side, but I think that to me is one way to try to pinpoint it a little better, where there's going to be production that goes somewhere. It's on both sides here. If you have no Porzingis, it's going to be distributed a certain way. And because it's Milwaukee, where you have to have outlier efforts besides the star player, usually to keep it close, I do think that trying to go to guys, you have Kleber's in, going to him, going to Josh Richardson, playing 2 of those guys along with Drew and no Luka would be the move, because there's a world where Drew has the ceiling to hit Luka. I just think it's a ceiling play for him. It's not so much that you want to get Drew in every lineup just because he's on DraftKings, 8,100, a little more expensive than Middleton. And they got a price tag that could leave you holding the bag if he doesn't have the outlier day.
Kawhi Leonard and Paul George showed they could both go off in the same game if given the opportunity, with over 50 fantasy points each versus Portland. Both are priced up tonight in a tougher matchup versus Phoenix. So Spags, which Clipper wins this one-on-one, Kawhi or PG?
I would still slightly prefer Kawhi here. I think these guys are both looking like comparable values to me. But I think the matchup against Phoenix does bode a little better for Kawhi, just because he's going to be able to get his sort of mid-range game going. I think he's going to have to really get it going against Phoenix, who does clamp down on 3-point shooters fairly well. I think that's where Paul George tends to have his better outlier days, went nuts in that first quarter against Portland. And that was a lot of it coming from deep. And I think that's something that's not going to be quite as readily available against Phoenix and their quality wing defense. So both guys look solid today, though. I think it's not crazy to play one or either of them, but I do think that, for me, Kawhi is just a guy that I like getting to a lot. I think especially on this slate where you're not paying up for Giannis at the same position, I think going to Kawhi, to me, he's guy has the floor. I think in competitive games, which is one against Phoenix should be. This is a potential Western Conference Finals preview. I know we all probably expect the Lakers to be there or even a Denver, but Phoenix is right there amongst the top teams. And I think this could be a spot that maybe brings out the best in everybody and could be a nice Kawhi game, or, I guess a decent Paul George game. I would just be more of a believer in there being a high level Kawhi game here than for Paul George.
Western Conference, save that clip. Because if you get that right, that's a hot take and I like it. Yeah, just to add some context, Phoenix third in the lead in opponents' 3-point percentage, 34% they hold teams to. And I think when I look at Kawhi versus Paul George, I generally think that Kawhi has a smaller range of outcomes. He's safer, but maybe his upside's capped a little bit. Paul George can have some nuclear games, but he also can have some floor games that really hurt you. And you mentioned, I think Phoenix does do a good job of kind of capping that upside for Paul George. So although there's a $1,200 difference, and looking at our projections, we do have them relatively close. Paul George gets a slight bump in terms of, points per dollar just because he is cheaper. I tend to err on Kawhi. I think I'd rather lock in maybe more of a secure floor where I don't think too many times Phoenix lets Paul George really get loose. You've mentioned the 3-point ability for defense, and that is the lifeblood of Paul George if he's really going to have a massive game.
All right. Nikola Vucevic just had his best game as a Bull with 64 fantasy points versus Indiana. Tonight, he faces Pascal Siakam, a player who could have a huge ceiling versus the Bulls with multiple teammates out. Ben, who wins this one-on-one, Vooch or Spicy P?
Spicy P, I didn't know that was a thing, or maybe it's not and Spags made it up. But
no, he is. He likes spicy food. His nickname is Spicy P. Any Raptors fan will tell you it's a terrible nickname, but also a great one at the same time.
Yeah, that's talk about large range of outcomes. I'm going to go with Spicy P here. This is a situation the Raptors, most of all the 50 guys that they have out are all in the backcourt. So it's really not disturbing that front court. But Siakam, if they are going to win this game, is going to be massively busy. He just logged 41 minutes against the Lakers, and I do like him in a lot of capacity tonight. I'm going to be talking about him in a little bit. And then you just look at Chicago's interior defense. Vooch is going to be on the other side. That doesn't exactly scare me. So although he is coming off a massive game, I like Siakam a lot tonight. I think he contributes across the board and really leads the Raptors. If they win a game like this at home, they're going to need him. 4-point dogs at home, 216.5 total. Spicy P. I like that name a little more than you, Spags. I'm now even further on him tonight than I was.
Hey.
I just think it's funny that he likes spicy food. His nickname is Spicy P, though. I did have a friend who one time ate a corn dog, and then we called him Corn Dog for 6 months just because it seemed like a funny thing to do. So I get it. Maybe that's how it began for old Spicy P. But I would also favor Mr. Spicy P today. I think this spot for him looks like a pretty good one against Chicago. Their defense has started to show some signs of improvement in terms of their defensive efficiency rating, up to a 109.9, which actually no, that's about where they've been. So no, you know what? Never mind. I guess I might have just been anecdotally thinking Chicago's been better, and in fact, they have not been better. And I think the spot too for Siakam, I expect him to do more here. I do think he is potentially the one way Malachi Flynn doesn't quite get there. Siakam having an outlier day. As Ben mentioned, 41 minutes against the Lakers, 41 minutes against the Bulls is more valuable, even though the Lakers are shorthanded. They're still, a well-coached team who fundamentally does a lot of good things defensively. I do think Siakam, if he plays 38 minutes here, it's a really nice spot for him to have a chance to really have that high upside again, kind of like I was talking about with Donovan Mitchell. So I think Siakam's a good play today. I think Vooch is perfectly fine if you get there at the center position, but I think his games are going to be more in the median the outcome range, closer to 45 fantasy points than 67. I think especially as Zach LaVine gets healthier, you have him probable today, you have Kobe White probable today, and these guys getting healthier just bodes a little bit worse for Vooch, just in terms of him having that ceiling outlier effort, whereas he could be perfectly fine. I think Siakam has a decent shot here to really show everybody, that he is a star in his own right, with two key parts of Toronto gone and Lowry and Van Vliet, and also one backup now gone and Bembry, who's taken a lot of ball handling possessions that could just go to Siakam.
Thank you, Spicy Spags.
I do like spicy food, so it could work.
That also has a nice ring to it.
So yeah, Spicy Spags might be better than, because Spags, when you see Swag EP is getting in my mind. There's too many that
yes.
It's merging these nicknames. I think he needs a differentiator.
Agreed.
Yeah, I don't know if I could be Swaggy Spags. I feel like that's or Spaggy P. I don't know. That's probably not good either. So yeah, I feel like Spicy Spags. I'm okay with it. I think I have too many gimmicks running at once. So if I start flipping money hats and then doing hot sauce, if I just can't lean into everything at once. That's my issue.
Yeah, let's not get greedy here with the nicknames. All right, let's pump the brakes. Fans, don't forget one of the biggest edges in sports betting is always shopping to find the best line. Betting lines change by the minute and can vary greatly depending on which book you are using. That's why it's important to use Awesemo's Odd Shopper to find the best line available on the game or player prop you are betting on and give you that advantage to help you beat the house. Head on over to oddshopper.awesemo.com where we compile the best bets available for game lines, player props, player and team futures, all updated in real time. Ben, before we get to your prop of the day, what is happening? Are you keeping any tabs on on the Masters? Like, is Jordan Spieth just like self-destructing? I know we're locked in NBA right now, but people in the chat are like going wild.
I know. So it's like, it's a blessing and a curse, and I love our chat. Obviously, feel free to do that, but I'm not keeping tabs. So like,
okay,
I'm paying attention on the show, and then I just see like, can't lay in the drink, and like a little piece of me, one of my organs just shuts down because I really need him not to do that. And apparently, I don't know if our chat is embellishing or Spieth is just mega imploding. I have no idea. I'm focused on NBA, so
okay.
It doesn't seem good though.
It sure doesn't. All right, it is time for the Dr. Ben Rasa prop of the day with Dr. Ben at 11-1. Womp womp. Dr. Ben, how do you feel after you endured your first loss on the tip-off show?
I feel the same way as knowing that Cantlay went in the drink. It hurts. I'm not going to lie. But no, I mean, being serious, we were talking about this. I had several very fortunate bounces during that streak, and Porzingis was one. I watched that game in full. I actually felt really good about the play when it was over. He got the volume. He just couldn't shoot. So you're going to win plenty where you probably don't deserve it. You're going to lose some that you probably deserve to win. And there'll be more of both, but I'm excited to hopefully start a new streak here. We'll see what we can do.
Absolutely. The new streak starts today.
That's right.
Here we go. Dr. Ben, the adoring eyes of a nation are rooting for you to return to the promised land of a prop bet victory after Kristaps Porzingis sullied your good name last time out. Reward the betting public's faith in you, and please give the huddled masses a reason to believe once more in the highly respected office of sports betting doctor. What is your prop bet of the day?
So this is one we've actually already touched upon a little just very, very recently. I'm going to Toronto, and specifically, it's funny, when I woke up this morning, I was looking at these lines. Originally, Chris Boucher was where I was going to go because he had a big game against the Lakers, but I just don't trust Nick Nurse and the minutes. I think he's probably a decent flyer for major upside, but I'm going to Siakam here. The minutes are definitely going to be locked in. They have no players. And I do believe this game can stay competitive. So his points plus rebounds plus assist prop, it's 36.5 and 37.5 around the industry. I found, this is why you go to oddshopper.awesemo.com, over 36.5 at minus 113. That's a really good line. If you like Siakam tonight, that is one to take advantage of. And it's a lot of the things that Spags has already highlighted. One, I don't think Chicago's defense, particularly on the interior, is any good. They're towards the bottom of the pack in points in the paint. Not that Siakam does all his damage down there, but he certainly can. And there's just really nothing that scares me. The usage is going to be there. And you really look at what he's been doing. He's 7 of 21 against the Lakers. He's taking double-digit shots in all these games. The minutes are more than secure. He's going to give you a couple of assists, certainly can rebound. And 36.5 just isn't that much. I think he's very live for easily north of 20 real points in this game. And if he can get into the upper 20s, I don't need that much. So at home against a Bulls team that I don't trust their defense at all, and just the situation, 36.5 is a good line. I think you're going to not find anything better than that across the industry if you're shopping. But the most important question, I say it every time, Spags, are you with me or are you against me?
I am with you on this one. I would have Siakam at 39 combined points plus rebounds plus assists. So I feel safely clearing that marker there. Obviously, with how these things can go, certainly can go under. But I'm a believer today in his ability to go over, and I feel like have all the things that Ben mentioned here, have the upside. I think most importantly for my faith is that Ben's not buying into the shtick too much, not wearing the doctor's lab coat, showing, flexing on all of us that he's a sports betting doctor, a money doctor, I think is what the graphic says. And I think for me, that's the main part here. We're getting back to the roots here, the real quality Dr. Ben prop bets. No flash, no nonsense, just the boys showing up here with a hope and a dream and a prop bet for you all. So take the over on the 36.5 for 36. Yeah, that's a really nice line. 36.5. Love it at DraftKings.
A lot of times the line dictates. Like, you have a play that you're kind of indifferent to, but you find a line and it really pushes you to make an actual position on it. And yeah, we got to go back to it. This is what happens. You get, a taste of the fandom, taste of Hollywood. You forget your roots. So you got to stay humble. I will make the stethoscope return when we get on another streak, but back to business today. I do want to ask you real fast here, Spags. What do you think of Boucher there? Because again, that's a guy that the talent is there. I just don't really trust the minutes. That was a prop that I looked at. Do you have any feel on the other Raptors bigs?
I do like Boucher today. I think that he's, to me, one of the other plays that jumps out. But the issue for me is that really, and it's something I talked about with Eric Lindquist the other day on one of our shows, that sometimes when you have a lot of guys jumping out, I tend to feel like you don't have anybody really jumping out, because it's sort of, you have these guys around the rotation with Lowry, with Van Vliet, now with Bembry too. You're going to have everybody then sort of, because of the way that I run my projections, picking up some of those assist numbers to try to get to what they normally get on a per game basis. That is sort of what normally happens in NBA, but sometimes it can be that just nobody ends up picking it up and the game just ends up going to crap. And I think that would be my one cause for concern with over projecting like any of the Raptors today. But with Siakam, I feel like it's, a very safe spot, because we know he's going to be out there for crazy minutes. And Boucher, it does seem is trending in the right way with minutes. Bane's still getting some, but clearly the backup big man for the most part in terms of how he's treated minutes wise hasn't been threatening for closing minutes or anything like that. So I feel okay about Boucher. And the ceiling is there. I just think that, to me, I feel a little more confident in Siakam being able to get there. And I think that's a thing for me where people love Boucher. People think that Boucher and Siakam are the same, and they are not the same, I think, is really the main thing that I would have. I don't think they just have the capability to really reach the same heights.
All right. Good stuff. Ben, we'll see how you do tomorrow. You're both back tomorrow, yes?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, between the Masters and this prop bet, I might be in dire straits. I will pull my lifeless corpse up the stairs, and I will be here.
As long as we don't get too cocky with the lab coat again, I think we're good.
I don't think we have to worry about that.
All right. Before we move on, Spags, Eric thinks that you should quit Awesemo and become a speechwriter for politicians.
Oh, just because of the intros for Benwood?
I said you should be a novelist. He followed up with that. Is that a career path you see yourself taking at any point?
No, I will never see. I'm never going to quit Awesemo again now, because Eric just wants me to leave, so he will have one less person to be mean to him on shows, and we need to keep that ego in check. Eric Lindquist just wants to have everybody quit here so he can get more airtime for himself, and it's not going to happen, Eric. So go to hell.
Whoa! Off the top, that got aggressive. So no, he's not going to be a writer, is I guess what we got from that. Let's head over to Ben. Do you have anything to add?
No. I'm just muttering to myself here.
You are muttering.
I am. There's no doubt about it.
Okay, let's head over to our no house advantage prop or not. Let's go back to the NBA now for our prop or not of the day. For these key players, do you like the over or under on them, and how many points would you assign to each? First up, we've got Joe Ingles over under 2.5 assists. Spags, let's go to you first.
So this is one that already looked like one of Awesemo's best bets on the board before we knew that Jordan Clarkson was also doubtful. So I'm actually going to check here to see where it's at. Yeah, now a 93% chance of going over. This to me looks like a 10-pointer, I think, today on No House Advantage. If you want to get a little bit safer, taking the over on points plus assists, I think is going to be marginally safer. Actually has less of a chance of hitting the over. But for me, I do feel like that's something that sometimes the No House Advantage, just trying to guess on a percentage number misses. Because I think, points and assists go hand in hand. And I think when you have the points there combined with it, like you're just kind of saying this guy's going to get X amount of possessions rather than saying this guy's going to have X amount of possessions doing X amount of or Y amount of thing. I think that's what the assist props are, but both look really good. I feel like, taking the over on the assist is fine. Taking points plus assists is fine. But either way, Joe Ingles to me on No House Advantage, these lines talk about a lot here, not reflecting Conley being out, also definitely not reflecting Conley and Clarkson being out. So just an inefficient line. And those are the ones you really want to capitalize on No House Advantage, where they set these at least a day, sometimes days in advance, and they don't get to adjust the injury news like some of the other sites out there do.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it with the NBA now. Everyone in chat already knows this. It's been crazy. Every day, this stuff is changing rapidly as we get closer to lock, and No House Advantage can't react. So you look at this, certainly Donovan Mitchell is going to be distributing, but other than that, there's going to be a lot of assists up for grabs. You only have to clear 2.5. Ingles should be able to do that. He probably should be able to do that even if they didn't have these personnel issues. So you look at that. I think the only question isn't, are you going over? Is that the 10-pointer? Is that the anchor of your lineup tonight? I would probably say, yeah. I mean, there's a couple others that are very, very likely, according to Awesemo, to go over. But just looking at this game and the makeup of the Jazz tonight against this Blazers team, I feel pretty comfortable in Ingles getting the job done.
All right, next we have Chris Middleton over under 22.5 points plus assists. Ben, back to you.
Yeah, so this is, again, it's the same concept. We've already talked about who's going to pick up the slack for this Bucks team, and Drew Holiday is certainly live to do that, but Chris Middleton is also going to be very involved. And this is one of those, Spags just talked about this with Ingles. Here you're getting a kind of the smooth variance because you're getting points and rebounds. Clearly Chris Middleton should be involved or points and assists, doesn't really matter. You're getting multiple categories. That's the point. Middleton's going to be involved. He's going to be distributing, and against a competitive team like the Mavericks here, another one. I don't think this one is as likely to clear as Ingles, but this is going to be in the upper half of your 10 pointers. So one of the easier ones on the slate as well.
Yeah, same thing for me here. This is another one. And I think this is a slate on No House Advantage. Recently, we've had a couple that were a little tougher talking about on the show, and including on the Live Before Lock show, we did the special, the half-hour special for No House Advantage on Tuesday. And that day, it did seem like the lines were a little bit tighter just because the injuries didn't move things around for the players who were available. But today, you have a couple of really obvious spots. And the Ingles one, the Middleton one, I mean, we know what Middleton does. We know he's had gigantic ceilings here. But because you're getting, as Ben mentioned, points plus assists, yeah, maybe he doesn't distribute that well, but the points are going to be there for him. One of those things is going to be there for him today, and an 82% chance of hitting the over according to Awesemo. That to me, probably more of a 9-pointer. I think the Ingles is still a 10-pointer, whether it be the assists or points plus assist prop for him. But I think either way, Middleton and Joe Ingles are probably the two guys to really build around a no house advantage. And if you're putting in multiple lineups, they're the guys to move away from and just take another prop, I guess, if you want to try to get different and hope that somehow it fails. It just seems very unlikely. You're playing a very narrow probability there to try to get it to fail.
All right. We've got Enes Kanter over under 23.5 points plus rebounds plus assists. Spags, back to you.
So this is one that's going to be really hinging upon Jusuf Nurkic being available or not. I think right now the assumption is that Nurkic will be available in Awesemo's projection. So as a result, this has a 95% chance of hitting the under. But this is one of those that I think is a very interesting play, but you kind of have to know the news, and the timing of the slate may not work out perfectly. This is one that I think is a contingency where if we get the news about Nurkic during the deeper dive or Live Before Lock, get the news that he's going to be in, I think this is a good prop to get in right away. If you don't get that news, you sort of have to make the choice of just omitting the prop entirely or trying to go the other way with it. And I think that to me is a little bit dicier, but I think this is just one right now to watch because this is a really strong, 10, 9, 8 pointer if you get Nurkic in. But if Nurkic is out, it's going to be a much easier one going the other way, but probably still not as great as to hit the over. So I think right now you want the under, but definitely want to watch the news here and make sure that Nurkic is going to be actually playing today.
Yeah, this is a little more unsolved where there's really nothing that could happen with the Bucks or with the Jazz because you're going over those props, and it's not like guys are just going to suddenly reappear. We kind of know what the situation is here, but with this one, there are some situations, clearly Nurkic, of course, that could mitigate it. So honestly, like this, there's a number of props. If you look at these projections that are pretty likely, I actually don't like this one unless we get distinct clarity. And as Spags said, you could be aggressive and maybe go the other way, but I would actually keep this more towards the back of my, allocations. If I was making 1 through 10, I don't like the situation. I think you could run into a little trouble because there's just uncertainty. And with some of these other props, we have absolute clarity, and it doesn't mean they're going to win, but we know we're going to get kind of what we're projecting at least, and we'll have the opportunity. So this one, although right now it's one of the highest, likelihoods of success with the under, I don't think I would put this towards my 10. I'd much rather go to the other two props that we've already discussed and that I think have less variance kind of baked into them.
All right. And fam, don't forget to play on No House Advantage, our sponsor, who is taking a different spin on daily fantasy sports by offering player prop contests across the NBA, MLB, NFL, and PGA for cash prizes. This exclusively peer-to-peer fantasy sports platform levels the playing field and makes it easier for you to win real cash compared with your traditional DFS sites. The best part is you can join for free today. Just download the No House Advantage app and use promo code Awesemo to receive a deposit bonus of up to $20 for new signups. Be your friends, not the house. Win big with player props today. All right, since we have time on our side today, I have a quick question for you guys. Someone said earlier they liked my shirt, which I thank them, but it's actually a romper. I love rompers. Do you remember a few years ago when there was such thing as a romp hem and men were wearing rompers? Did either of you follow along that trend or no?
What do you think?
We just took a huge left turn from the NBA.
Like, I thought you were going to ask, like, do I know what a romper is? That's more like me. No, I missed that trend. Was that a viral sensation? I mean, you're more hip to this stuff.
It went around for a second.
Also, Kayla, by the way, you brought this on yourself, and now the chat's just demanding you stand up, which I feel like is not good for anybody involved. We're going into creep town here, but if you're gonna brag about rompers, I feel like you gotta romp around.
So this is a one piece.
No, yeah, I get it. I get it. I feel like if you're a guy doing that, you have to really be into like massage oils or something. And that's not be my jam. Or you have to have like a thriving Instagram page of influencing people and try to sell them some hair products, which honestly, I wouldn't mind, but I'm not there yet. So I'd say no, the romp him, not for me. But I do remember it going viral. I think that was actually might've been while I was still at Barstool. And I remember we had a couple of guys there who were leading into the bit and like, oh, I'm going to buy one and wear one. I think actually might have. So it definitely is a thing that some people did. But.
Yeah, they're very comfortable. So, you guys are missing out.
If Spags isn't there yet, then I'm many iterations behind. That I'll let him be the trendsetter, and then I will follow. So no, I'm not. I thought you were going to ask about it being Kelly Green. But
yeah, that's my other question. Chat. This is the closest thing I have to Masters Green, but I asked the guys before the show, and they said it looked teal. But then Ben told us that he's actually colorblind. So then that went out the door.
I'm not colorblind. That's not true. It's just, I was saying, what if your green is like my orange? That I think about that, and it's kind of a disturbing question.
And I did say that was a Kyrie Irving type question too.
Yeah, you're right about that.
Like what, man, what, like, and he would sit out 3 games when that question was posted.
Well, this is Masters Green for all of you in the chat, whether the guys think so or not.
I think there's some masters in the chat right now too, it seems, based on those reactions.
I don't even want to look. All right. Let's move on over to one of our favorite segments, Good Dog, Bad Dog. There it is. In real life, there is no such thing as a bad dog. And betting in DFS, there are a lot of underdogs who may have no chance in their game. So who's a good dog to target tonight and who's a bad one? Ben, let's start with your good dog.
So I'm going to go to a team that we've talked about a lot because they're extremely relevant for the DFS side of things. And this is more just, I don't really trust Chicago. Chicago's a 4-point favorite on the road here. I think Toronto can hang in this game. I know they're down a lot of players, but they still have some major contributors, particularly Siakam. I think they do have the advantage on the inside. And if they get enough from maybe Flynn and whoever else they're throwing out there for the wings, I see no reason why they can't steal a game at home here. You're getting plus, like 170 on the money line. You're getting 4 points if you want to take them. I see this more as a toss-up than a game that the Bulls are going to win comfortably. So for me, good dog for the Raptors tonight.
Yeah, that's the same one for me. So I feel like now I have to choose a different one, but clearly we have both dug our heels in on the Toronto Raptors today. So it'll be a sad show tomorrow. We both went up wrong here, but I am team Toronto here. I think they win this one outright at home. I mean, it's not their real home. They're still in Tampa for now, but I do think this spot, to me, I just believe in the shorthanded Raptors a bit more than the Bulls even getting back to full health. And I just feel like the Raptors to me have been due for better days all year long. So I think in this spot here, I just kind of disrespectful spot, especially given the fact that they, just really thwomped a team within the last week, winning by 50 points. Like, I think that there is a situation here for Toronto that they can have a nice day today against Chicago and win this one. So that'd actually be one of my favorite money line bets to take today, is just taking them to win.
All right. Spags, going right back to you for your bad dog.
For my bad dog, I think it's Oklahoma City. I don't know why. I'm a big believer in Cleveland today, which seems scary, but they are getting 8 more points from Vegas than their season average in terms of scoring, projected for 110.8 implied points today. I think Ben might have had that a little bit higher in the lines he was looking at. So to me, like, Cleveland just kind of screams a team that Vegas is very much buying into today. And maybe Oklahoma City does score a little bit more. They are projected for 2 more points than their season average, but I really think the Cleveland side, they've shown the ability to score at a high level. Ben talked earlier about the Darius Garland upside day that came there, but I think still you have Love rounding into form, at least getting healthier. You have Sexton, who still does his thing every night in, night out. And if Garland shows a little more upside, Taurean Prince also been playing pretty well. And I think those are really guys that I've been more impressed by relative to what we expect of Cleveland. Definitely not good, but I think that Oklahoma City is going to be a bad dog and going to lose by more than the spread here for Cleveland.
I don't mind that one. I could throw my support behind that. I think that I'll say this quickly. I don't see the Lakers standing much of a chance against Miami, but that's a lot of points. That's a 9-point spread. So I'm going to go to a game that I tend to do this sometimes, and it's not all gut feel, but you've got a team like the Suns who are playing great ball, certainly up and coming against a more experienced veteran team that's been there and done that against the Clippers. I kind of feel like these are the type of games that, the Clippers will be ready. They're at home tonight. You've got most of the key contributors healthy with Paul George and Kawhi. I think they get it done. They're a 6-point favorite here. I think this is just one of those games where we kind of see that there is a little difference. I like Phoenix, and I would love to see them make a run. I think when it comes down to it in competitive games, certainly in playoff series, there's just a difference. There's a gap. I think the game will slow down. And I think Phoenix tonight will have a tough time with the Clippers. I don't expect them to go in there and win their 8th straight. I think they lose tonight, and they lose pretty handily.
All right. That'll do it for Good Dog, Bad Dog. We are not talking MLB today, obviously, because the locks were earlier, but it's actually a national holiday. I'm not sure you all are aware. It is the Cards home opener. Spags, I'm sure you have a lot of thoughts about this.
I mean, I think from what I recall from the show, and granted it was 9 a.m. our time, so my brain function not the best before 10 a.m. usually. But if I do recall, we actually very much all agreed that the pitcher going against St. Louis was one of the best options on the slate today. And in fact, I think the DFS industry agrees pretty fully as well that the Cardinals, Corbin Bird's going against them today, and he was going to be owned. I don't know what the ownership ended up being on the tournaments out there, but he was projected to be 42% owned going against the Cardinals. So that means that everybody hates the Cardinals, not just me, I guess.
We're down 1-0 right now, but
we're
second in the NL Central, 4-2.
Yeah, look, they're a competent team. I just think it's funny, like we talked about on the Live Before Lock today, but like Nolan Arenado going to the Cardinals from Coors Field. Like I know Kayla, you've probably been to some Cardinals games, but it's a pitcher's park. It's not the same as Coors, and like that is a drastic downfall for a guy who's been padding stats in Coors for years, and now he's just going to go to St. Louis and get angry tweets from people calling him all sorts of things because of those classless Cardinals. I'm mad at Eric Lindquist, and I'm mad at the Cardinals fans. Those are my takes.
Why are you mad at Eric?
I don't know. Just I'm doing
just
a bit.
Perpetually.
Yeah, just perpetually.
Just always.
Don't be mad at me.
Poor guy.
He's making friends in the chat today, though, so good for him.
He is. He influences people.
Now heading over to Make or Break. Which player or game currently looks like a make or break spot to you on tonight's slate, Benjamin? Is that your full name, Benjamin?
It is. No
one calls you that.
Nobody calls me that. No,
okay.
But you know what? I never expect to be called doctor either. So who knows what ends up happening here? It's Pascal Siakam.
Anything goes.
Yeah, anything goes. But clearly the Raptors are a team that I have a lot of interest in on the betting side of things. And I think it's obviously correlated that if they do win tonight, it's hard to imagine that Siakam doesn't have a major influence on that. So on the DFS side, Malachi Flynn is going to be an important guy, especially if you're paying down. Those minutes are very secure in the backcourt. But for me, on the betting side of things, I think Siakam is the key piece. He has to dominate, and I think he will get the better of Vooch tonight. So Raptors, Siakam, key cogs of my success tonight.
Yeah, I think for me, I do very much believe in the Raptors. I imagine I'm going to get a good amount of Siakam, barring the ownership going up a lot more from where it is right now, projected for about 26% on DK, 30% on FanDuel for Pascal Siakam. But I think ultimately for me, just because of the value represented in the situations where the assumptions these guys have to play a good run of minutes, Malachi Flynn and Bobby Portis probably the ones that decide my day, because I imagine they're going to get in a lot of lineups as the guys who open up the room to get to Siakam, the room to get to Donovan Mitchell. I think that those are guys that I really will be with the field on as hoping that they're good chalk today, but there really is for me just not a lot of reason to not play them. Just guys playing gigantic minutes or potentially playing gigantic minutes in the case of Malachi Flynn. I think in this spot, I'm just loading up on Flynn and Portis and hoping you can figure out the other spots. Seems like the move for me.
All right. Spags, it's now a goal of mine to get you to Busch Stadium.
It's like the Cardinals?
Yeah.
Have you ever been there, Spags?
No, I've not. I've seen the arch. Like I know it exists.
Cool.
I know.
Like in Google, or you've actually been there?
St. Louis ribs seem pretty good. I had them once in New York.
The barbecue is fantastic.
Yeah.
We'll take you to a game. We'll get the pulled pork nachos. You'll love it.
I'm sure. I can't be mad at a place that's like the American home of beer, but it's just, this the fans just need to chill out. That's all I say. I just want chill vibes always, Kayla. We're California people. We just like to chill. We don't like people being angry at Twitter, yelling at poor Jack Flaherty because he wants to get paid. Let Jack Flaherty get paid, Cardinals fans.
All right. Well, maybe we'll settle for Dodgers Cardinals here.
I would do that. I like a Dodger dog too.
It's nothing compared to what they have at Busch Stadium, but it is what it is. All right, let's head on to our fade of the day. Last but not least, is there one game, player, or team you anticipate you'll have a lot less interest in than the rest of the public? Spags.
Honestly, I don't know that anything jumps out meaningfully. I'm actually just going to refresh the ownership to make sure that I'm not missing anything. But the guys up top so far, at least in the most recent round of ownership, a little preview of money time for you guys. But Bobby Portis, Donovan Mitchell, Pascal Siakam. I like all these guys today. Chris Middleton, another guy that I liked more. Luka, Malachi. You could literally go through all these guys today, and I really don't think there's one that I dislike. I guess the highest owned one on DK to me that comes with just not a whole lot of love, or at least not a crazy amount of love, is Colin Sexton, because if Darius Garland keeps pushing the usage up because he had an amazing day, and that's something that it wouldn't be the craziest thing in the world, that Sexton could just give away a few more possessions and let Garland get there. I think Sexton's ownership could be a bit high. I'd prefer to go to the big men there because there's sort of a more obvious pathway to having the upside. So I guess for me, Colin Sexton, but for this slate, like I've never felt more aligned with thinking that these guys were all good plays as chalk. And I think that's always a scary place to be, I'd say, for DFS.
Yeah, I'm kind of in a similar boat, even on the betting side of things. I guess the Suns would be a team that I just said I like the Clippers in the game. So certainly, seeing any of their key weapons explode tonight wouldn't be good, but I don't think they're going to garner a ton of interest on the DFS side of things, whether you're talking about Booker or CP3 or whatnot. So for me, it's pretty straight up. I think with NBA in general right now, just to speak to the betting side of things for a couple seconds, these games, there's so much ebbs and flows that, being in tune with it, live betting is becoming more and more like within my portfolio. I find myself taking more wait and see approaches on a lot of teams where I know that I want to bet them, but I don't want to bet them at the start of the game. I'm kind of saying I will find a spot within 4 quarters to get a position, and I think it'll be better than the line at the beginning of the game. So a team like the Clippers, I may not even lay 6. I may try to hope that the Suns start quickly and I can grab -4, -5. That point or two makes a large difference.
Also, one quick thing in the chat to point out here, and this is just really striking not a chord for me, not a nerve, because we were watching The Wire recently, but a guy named Mr. Bubbles is like really jonesing to ask what your favorite prop of the day was, Ben. And I told him in chat, but I feel like that's what you did here. You basically injected some sort of addictive drug into the veins of everybody with all of your winning. And now they're here, much like Bubbles on The Wire, just looking for their fix. And I just want to make sure we get it out there. But yeah, the Siakam over under, that's what the main event, Ben, to just tell people one more time about Siakam.
Yeah, Siakam tonight's going to be busy. Points, rebounds, assists. Honestly, the thing that stands out the most is the line 36.5. If you shop across the industry, you're going to find 37.5 at higher juice than that 36.5. So what season are you on, Spags? Are you doing a full rewatch?
Yeah, we're doing a full rewatch because she had never watched it all. She actually had made one of the worst takes ever, where she said that she thought that Gossip Girl was a better show than The Wire when we first started, because she'd never watched it in full.
I'm sorry to say that.
And like, she was being a troll, and honestly might hear me right now, and will, I'm sure, chime in with some nonsense after we get off the show. But yeah, like I get you like your shows or whatever, but The Wire, like, I'm not one of those guys who's like, oh, you got to watch The Wire. Like, I'll tell everybody you got to watch The Wire. But if you watch The Wire, and it's like, how could you debate that this is like basically a Dickensian novel brought to life in a show? And it's a fantastic show. Not when you want to rewatch that often, because depressing as all hell. But the Omar Court scene in season 2 is one of my favorite pieces of content that's ever occurred.
Spoiler alert, I have not watched it. It's on my list.
No spoilers. Just know that the Omar Court scene in season 2 is fantastic. And for we don't share the same personal proclivities, I'll say, wouldn't be it robbing drug dealers or other things, but but boy does he wear it well. Love Michael K. Williams.
How many seasons are we talking?
5.
Yeah, okay. 5.
It's amazing. It's as good as it gets. Even season 2, which is not the best, the more you watch it, you actually have a very good appreciation for season 2.
It's better this go around than I thought it initially was, which I've heard people say, and I was surprised by.
Yeah. Yep.
I still need to watch The Sopranos too.
Oh,
I'm way behind the times.
That's
I know, guys. Ben, really quick. This is the first time we've seen you this week, so we haven't checked in with the national championship. How did you do on Monday?
I mean, I know this sounds like a party pooper. I didn't bet the game because it was I thought it was a very efficient line. Wasn't, looking back in hindsight, it seems like Gonzaga was unable to get up after what was one of the best basketball games I've ever seen in my entire life against UCLA. Baylor's impressive. Good for them. Didn't bet it though. If I had to, I would have bet Gonzaga, but it was just a spot. 2 really good teams. Ironically, after a crazy season, we got what everyone expected the whole time. Baylor and Gonzaga, the 2 best teams. But Yeah, uneventful game, but the UCLA game was worth the whole tournament. That was one of the best games I've ever seen.
I didn't even think we needed a championship after that.
No, they should have just stopped it then. What a game.
Yeah. All right, we've got 2 minutes left. Any final thoughts from you guys today for tonight's slate?
My girlfriend texted me that Blair Waldorf greater than Omar, which I'm big Leighton Easter fan, but Omar would take that girl down 10 times out of 10. I would honestly like to see a crossover where Omar just robs everybody on Gossip Girl and we have a good time.
I would watch that. Yeah.
That's the reboot that people really want. They don't want this Gossip Girl reboot that's going on right now. They just want Omar coming and just dragging the shotgun while whistling. Oh, such a badass.
I also need to watch Gossip Girl. I watched like the first 2 seasons and fell off. I was in college, but I was preoccupied with other things.
Young Blake Lively, really a fun show. I went to a New York City public school growing up, so I always felt an affinity for it. But definitely sexier teens in the Gossip Girl universe than we had in Horace Mann and Riverdale, unfortunately.
I spent the last 6 months watching all 22 episodes of SVU, which we talked about last week. So I'm ready to expand and watch some other shows. If anyone has suggestions.
Get some culture in there. SVU is not culture. The Wire, Gossip Girl, now there's culture. That's culture you can set your watch to.
Ben, what are you watching these days besides golf?
A lot of sports. I watch The Wire. So when I build lineups and stuff, I watch The Wire just over and over. Always.
That's your background. Okay.
Yeah, background, but lacrosse. I've been in college lacrosse, which is very disturbing. On a lot of let's go Albany. They are playing right now against Syracuse. But yeah, we got a lot going on here. I will say real quick, the golf, if you are in Slack, we will be talking. There's going to be a lot of bets, live bets. That's one of the best sports to do it. So if you're not in, get on in. It's a great time for PGA. I know if you got off to a slow start at the Masters, don't panic. There is a lot of golf left, a lot of money to be made.
All right. And with that, that's going to do it for our show today. I'm Kayla Knierim. Thank you to Spags and Ben for joining us. Thank you all for watching and being super involved in the chat today. We love that. I think we are back at 3 o'clock Eastern tomorrow. Yes, no?
Yep, 3 o'clock.
3 o'clock Eastern. Mark your calendars. We'll all be back tomorrow. And don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. The Deeper Dive and Live Before Lock are up next. We'll see you guys tomorrow.
Don't forget to watch me on Live Before Lock. Me, Eric Lindquist, coming up a little. All right, later, guys.
Later.
Bye, guys. Thank you.
Have a good one.
What's up, y'all? Like a furnace in here.
What?
So hot in my office.
Oh yeah, my apartment's hot. It's like a greenhouse.
Yeah, it's brutal.
I really need to get curtains.
What?
I really need to get curtains. It would probably cool it
Yeah,
down.
that would help. I just went to get food and I popped open the sunroof, all the windows down.
Yeah.
Nice day around here. Finally.
Yeah, I think I might get out for the first time in like a week.
Gonna hit up the bar?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, let's do it. You're vaccinated now, man.
Yeah, I mean, I was going before anyway.
I know you were. Up a little bit. Let's get going here. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Awesemo.com NBA Deeper Dive presented by Jock Market. I'm Dave Loughran at Laffy_D on the Twitters, LOUGHY_D. Joined as always 5 days a week by Adam Scherer at ShipMyMoney DFS. What's going on, brother?
Another day. Another
day.
Yeah, it's nice. I am enjoying this week of like just consistent 7 to 9 game basketball slates.
Jordan, can you hear this fan or are we all right? We good? All right. Jordan Klein doing all of the production work back there. So we've got 7 games to hit on. Of course, I'll ask you how you're feeling about this one in just a moment. Giannis Antetokounmpo is doubtful to play and a couple of other things that are pending right now. So we will let you know as soon as we get that information, as soon as that news breaks. And if we don't get it, live before lock. Greg Ehrenberg, Eric Lindquist will take you up till 7:30, and they'll get you covered. But before anything, we're happy to have all of you guys with us. And you know it only takes a second to hit that thumbs up, maybe another half a second to hit that subscribe if you haven't done so yet. So just take that second, right? Whatever you're doing, drop it, hit the thumbs up, hit the subscribe, help get us just, to the top of the pack. We're almost there. But we're putting out what I think is the best DFS content that you're going to find for free. So if you feel the same way, thumbs up, subscribe, notification bell. Let's dive into it. Your first thoughts on this slate, general overview, type of builds. What are we looking at tonight?
It's another one of these April NBA slates where we have entire teams missing. I mean, Toronto, you have the injuries they were already dealing with. Then you have the suspension through the Andre Bembry. So they're even more shorthanded than normal today. You have Giannis, who's doubtful. So assuming that the Bucks don't do the opposite of what they did the other day and rule him in halfway through the slate, you're going to have, a shorthanded Bucks team. You have potentially a very shorthanded Detroit team with Jeremy Grant out, with Mason Plumlee doubtful or questionable rather. There's just, a lot of teams that are shorthanded, and it presents some pretty clear-cut plays, I think.
Do you think maybe Chris Middleton won't let us down this time?
Really doubtful.
Okay. I'm feeling the same way, but it doesn't matter. You kind of just have to go back to that. Well, let's kick it off with the Lakers and the Miami Heat. Now, you might look at this game initially and be like, oh, what do I want to play from the Lakers? There's nothing there. But I got to tell you, and I want to dig into this right out of the gate. No better person to do it here than you. Lakers 9-point dogs, 205 total. Very low total. Kyle Kuzma went from probable to questionable. Taylor Horton-Tucker went from whatever to out because he got suspended for that, leaving the bench in that fight. But Andre Drummond, right? Let's talk about Andre Drummond. He was on pace to play about 26 minutes in that game that he started for the Lakers before the toe injury. Now, you look at him, and I think it's very easy to have short-term memory, have recency bias, and forget about him. But Adam, he's 5,200 on FanDuel. This is a guy who on the season is a 1.48 fantasy point, DraftKings point per minute producer. He is the best rebounder in the league, 26% rebound rate. He's a 16% assist rate, 31% usage rate on the year. They have no LeBron. They have no Anthony Davis. And he averages 3 stocks per game for his career. I mean, he's just really, really good from a DFS standpoint. Forget about real life. Do you think Drummond gets enough minutes at 5,200 to pay it off today? Because we know that if he's on the floor, he's very likely going to have a good enough game.
I think so. The last time in his Lakers debut, I kind of quickly went through the math on our show, and it's, I think, the same price point he was at then. He looked really bad in that game. He wasn't very productive. There were a couple of the Lakers beat writers basically tweeting how he broke a sweat from the first minute of the game. And then, obviously he's missed some time since then with the toe injury, but he did play like 13 minutes in the first half. He dealt with some foul trouble, but if and then obviously left with the injury, but it looked like he was going to play 25 or 26 minutes. And you mentioned the per minute production from him. We don't know exactly how many minutes he plays, but if you assume that he's going to average right now with LeBron out and with Davis out, if you assume that he's going to average similar production as he did with the Cavs, even if you knock off a little bit for rust, let's say, call it 1.35 or 1.4 fantasy points per minute. If he gets like 20 minutes, he's going and produces at that rate, he's going to give you a satisfactory, result for his salary. And that's a pretty low minutes projection. Like, I think a decent median for him is 24, 25 minutes based on what we saw last time, unless we get word that he's limited to less. And if you get that, there's a pretty good chance that he just puts up a score that you really need at that salary. So I think that even though the minutes and even the production are somewhat volatile here, because we haven't seen him play a real game in like a month and a half, I think that at 5,200, the risk reward scenario just drastically favors rostering him.
That's where I'm at now. $6,500 on DraftKings is a little bit different to me. Like, would you rather have a $6,500 Drummond on DraftKings, or would you rather have a $5,700 Chris Boucher at an $800 discount, or neither?
That's the same comparison I was going to make, because I think that to an extent the question marks are the same for those guys. There's always playing time question marks with Boucher. With them being shorthanded, you would think he plays more, but we'll dive into that more. I think that they're really close. I would lean probably just towards whichever one's lower owned, because I think that there's a pretty wide range of outcomes for both guys.
Yeah, I think so too. And we'll get to that game shortly between Toronto and Chicago. Actually, it's right up after this first one. But outside of Drummond, we don't have any news on Kyle Kuzma yet. We already don't have LeBron. We already don't have Anthony Davis. Taylor Horton-Tucker's out. So if Kyle Kuzma's out, does that force us to look at Dennis Schroeder and Montrezl Harrell? Like, what do we do because when a guy goes from probable to questionable, you have to at least try and observe or evaluate all of the other scenarios here. Let's dig into that one a little bit first.
Yeah, so I'm not sure how much of a DFS impact Kuzma being out would have, because the Lakers could just kind of play guys that aren't DFS relevant to soak up a lot of those minutes. Like maybe you see more minutes for Alex Caruso, maybe you see more minutes for KCP and Markieff Morris. Like all those guys would potentially be viable. But I think you would also just see run for like McKinney, and he'd soak up some minutes. You have Ben McLemore who's available. So I'm not sure that if Kuzma's out, it necessarily makes any one other player a whole lot better. I think that maybe you get a little bit more usage for Schroeder, but obviously that is to some extent being offset by Andre Drummond replacing Marc Gasol, presumably in the starting lineup. So I'm not really sure how big of an impact Kuzma being out would have from a DFS standpoint, especially in the tough matchup against Miami as well.
Okay. So then what about the rest of the Lakers? Is there anything other than Drummond on FanDuel that stands out to you?
Not really. I mean, I think Drummond's fine on DraftKings too. Caruso, I think if you're playing a lot of tournament lineups, you could look to as a value play. But again, I don't think it's going to be that hard to find value on this slate. Dennis Schroeder, I think Spags mentioned it on the show before, but I think that like if Kuzma plays, I think Kuzma is more negatively affected by Drummond than Schroeder is, because Kuzma's rebounded at a really high rate in these games without Davis and without James, and Drummond rebounds at a higher rate than Gasol or Harrell. So I think Kuzma is more negatively impacted than Schroeder is. I think you lose a little bit of usage for Schroeder, but if I had to go to someone outside of Drummond, out of those main pieces, I think Schroeder, I would have Schroeder ahead of Kuzma.
All right. Hey, appreciate the super chat, James. And welcome to the family. Hellrel Jackson. Welcome to Team Awesemo. You click that join down there. It's $2.99 a month. I always say do it or don't. Doesn't matter to me. It's not like I see any of the proceeds. Not that I should, right? But it's pretty cool. You got the badges. You got the emojis. There's one of me. There's one of Ben too, Dr. Ben. There's one of Alex. There's the money hat. There's a bunch of cool stuff. So check it out. You want to join the community here at Awesemo. Obviously, it's not like, oh, you do this and then you're getting content that Awesemo subscribers over at the site up. No, it's none of that. It's just some cool perks around there. Plus, in the NFT days, the NFT world that we're in right now, exclusivity is king, Adam.
Yeah.
I knew you didn't hear what I said. That was a test.
Depending on the month.
Yeah, right. Yeah, well, hey, you don't have to use MetaMask, so this will never go into a bear market. We'll see what happens. What are you doing with Miami? Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo, and how do you think Victor Oladipo's arrival has affected them recently, given that Butler, if you want to play him, you're still paying a hefty price point?
Yeah, I think it's overall just a pretty unappealing game to me. It's one of the lower totals on the slate. The Lakers have been solid defensively, even without LeBron and without Davis. And then you also just have so much pending news on this slate that there's two 7:30 games, there's one 8 o'clock game, and then the rest of the games don't start till 9. I think this is a slate where you and I had talked about it before, but from a tiebreaker standpoint, if you don't feel really strongly, there's typically going to be a benefit to keeping your roster spots open. That being said, you obviously can look to the main two pieces here, I think, in Butler and in Adebayo in particular. Bam's played really well. Oladipo joining the team hasn't hurt him. It hasn't really hurt Butler either. Butler's usage rate has gone down some, but he still has a 35.5% assist percentage. I think that you'll see the usage rate kind of stabilize between right now. He's at about 21% in the games with Oladipo. Prior to that, he was at about 26%. I think you probably end up seeing it stabilize somewhere in the middle. So I think Butler's still fine. I think Bam is fine, but I think that there's going to be better options in terms of priorities. And like I said, the start time of the game doesn't really do you any favors either.
All right. So 205 total. It's the lowest on the slate by a pretty wide margin. When you're talking Miami right now, ownership, overall intrigue, do you see anything that you say, all right, you know what, I'm building a lineup, maybe I'm hand building a lineup, or I'm running a 3-max lineup, or I'm playing a cash game lineup? Is there anybody from Miami that you'd feel comfortable with having in a cash lineup or in a single entry lineup at all?
I'd be really surprised if anyone from Miami ended up in my cash lineup, like really surprised. Single entry, it's not a priority for me, but if I sort of ended up with like a last guy in on Bam or on Butler, it would be fine. Like they're definitely high enough upside guys where I wouldn't like redo a lineup just to get them out of it, but they're just not guys that I'm targeting, in my first couple of lineups if I have a choice.
All right. Any news here? We got any news here?
No, just Muscala and Darius Miller.
Darius Miller ruled out. Okay. And it looks like Mike Conley is going to play on the second of a back-to-back. It appears Kristaps Porzingis on the second of a back-to-back will also be active. So let's assume they're going to play. And let's move on to Chicago and Toronto. We got the word that Zach LaVine will be active today. The Bulls are in Toronto, well, facing Toronto, wherever they're playing. 4-point favorites, 217 total. We'll get to the Raptors in a second because that one's going to take a while to break down. But let's kick it off with Chicago. Zach LaVine's $8,000 on DraftKings, $7,200 on FanDuel. Now, if you're talking FanDuel, that price obviously becomes pretty appealing. But then you also have to consider Donovan Mitchell, $7,800. There's a couple guys that are at good price points. But I ran the numbers today. I was very curious to see what Zach LaVine's numbers looked like alongside Nikola Vucevic, Adam. And of course, you don't have a huge sample, right? Understandably so. But he's played 110 minutes alongside Vuce, and he has 1.43 DraftKings points per minute, a 40% usage rate, and 33% assist rate. Is it sustainable? No, I'm not saying that. But maybe Vuce hasn't actually hurt him as much as some might have thought he would have from a DFS perspective.
Yeah, LaVine's been fine so far. If you look at the games overall that he's played since Vuce got there, he's got a 30.2% usage rate. The assist percentage is 17.5%. It's not too far off from what he was doing beforehand. I didn't look for the most recent game, but I know after the first few games, LaVine was averaging like one fewer potential assists per 36 minutes, so not something you're going to be too concerned about. He's still producing. So the bigger thing for me is that the salary has dropped. And I think that it's still at a price point where he's not going to stand out as like the top shooting guard or as, a huge priority on this slate, especially because you have some guard options from Milwaukee without Giannis. But, I do think that he's cheap enough where you're expecting to get around 34 minutes from LaVine. We only have him projected for about 12% ownership on DraftKings at one of the cheapest price points that he's been at all year. I do think that, he's a good play in tournaments. He clearly has a high ceiling for that salary.
Got some super chats rolling in. Oh, dude, you told me how to pronounce your name and I forget it. It's not Karen. Koran. I'm going to go with Koran. I don't know. I'm trying here. Says, what's up, fellas? Looking forward to winning some cash tonight. Appreciate all at Awesemo. Ship, you won me the most money in DFS. Best in the business.
Nice. Glad to hear it.
First time for everything, man. That is exciting stuff. Thanks for the super chat. James Watts, another one. My fellow Met. Good thing I did not read that one. Ooh, that came real fucking close to me reading that. And good thing I know how to read before speaking. Shit. He paid to say that too. Did you see it?
I think so, yeah.
Oh, man. Woo. All right. Well, and I don't know. We got one more super chat from Kelly Sullivan. Okay. And then Kelly said paying $10 to say, James, the guy who just asked that question that got deleted by our boy El Negro Loco, is saying James Watt is the GOAT. All right. Well, we're well off the rails and we just got started. So welcome to the deeper dive. What are you doing with the rest of Chicago? Can you look to Jordan's over here dying. He's red in the face. Can you get the
He's not even on the screen.
Yeah, he's off the screen. See, this is why I've been begging for us to get a producer screen. Tell me in the chat, would you not love that? Once in a while, something goes down and we pop Jordan up in the frame to get these type of reactions. We did the Christmas show. The guy drank a bottle of Grey Goose or what was it? Not Kettle One. What's the handmade one? Tito's in like 10 minutes. Fun stuff.
Yeah,
you like
Vucevic? You need to get him on camera. Just don't give him a mic.
No mic. Just like reactionary stuff. Like, how you'd see someone behind the glass producing a show?
Yeah.
Like a real, something like that. I don't know. I think it'd be great.
Yeah. So for the rest of Chicago, I think that you can still get the Vuce. I don't think he really stands out as a top priority on the slate, but he clearly has a very high ceiling coming off of the game with like 64 fantasy points. You are getting Daniel Tice back, which is slightly concerning just because you had seen in his first few games in Chicago, Vuce playing like 30 to 32 minutes. He got a few more minutes last game with Tice out. It remains to be seen if that was solely because Tice was out or if we can start counting on 34, 35 minutes from Vuce. So I think Tice being back adds a little bit of risk, but you're still, again, kind of similar to LaVine. You're talking about close to 12% ownership from Vuce, about a 12% chance of being in the optimal lineup on DraftKings. So definitely someone that, has a pretty high ceiling and that I think you can look to here.
Okay. Man, that was wild. This is why this show is the greatest, because some people hate dealing with chat. I love it, man. You have to embrace it. You have to embrace the wild nonsense that goes on every day. And then you get some people that just want to watch a show and get some DFS information. We'll try and do that as well. Anything else for the Bulls, or do you want to try and tackle this Toronto squad?
Yeah, I think we can move on to trying to figure out what Toronto is going to do.
All right. So, no Fred VanVleet, would have been suspended anyway. DeAndre Bembry suspended. Now, I think this is much bigger news that we have to break down than I've heard talked about. And we can get to that in just a second, because he was playing a lot of minutes. Kyle Lowry's also out. And then you got no Rodney Hood and, you know, a couple of other spots that aren't as significant. So let's do this, Adam, because we know Siakam is going to be popular. We already talked a little bit about Boucher. We'll get there. And Malachi Flynn, of course, is still 4,700 on DraftKings. But how do you see this DeAndre Bembry absence affecting the rest of the rotation? Because he's played 30-plus minutes in back-to-back games. And believe it or not, since VanVleet went down, played half of that game. But in the last 3 games, DeAndre Bembry leads the team in potential assists with 10. I bet you wouldn't have guessed that. So I actually think, given the minutes and given Nick Nurse how he likes to stick with certain guys, taking Bembry off the court as well seems pretty significant. Who benefits the most? Does Malachi Flynn start? Does Boucher get more minutes because him and Baines aren't going to play a full 48 anyway? Where do you see this one going today?
My guess is that Malachi Flynn starts in place of DeAndre Bembry. Nurse had said a couple of games ago before the Wizards game that Flynn was going to start, and then he just started Bembry instead because he had said he didn't want to throw Flynn out there against Westbrook and Beal. But Flynn's played starter minutes in both of those games. He started the second half last game when OG Anunoby was ejected in the first half. So I think Flynn starts. Bembry being out is a really big deal for 2 reasons. Basically going back to what you were saying about how many minutes he was playing and the assists, it solidifies minutes for Malachi Flynn, who was well on his way to being a massive disappointment last slate had he not gotten a bunch of minutes in the second half with Anunoby out. But Pascal Siakam, I think, is the backup point guard here. Siakam has been kind of disappointing in these last couple of games without Lowry, without VanVleet. He ended up kind of salvaging last slate towards the end. But I expect that you see his minutes staggered with Flynn. I expect you see him with the ball in his hand a lot here, because they only have 8 bodies. The only other real option, Gary Trent. And I think you just see Siakam take on a bigger playmaking role. So I think it benefits Siakam. I think it solidifies the minutes for Malachi Flynn. And then on top of that, it obviously just solidifies minutes for everyone. Like, you're probably going to get 38 to 40 minutes from Siakam. You're probably going to get 38 to 40 minutes from OG Anunoby. Malachi Flynn probably plays mid-30s. Gary Trent probably plays somewhere between like 36 and 40. So it's a really big deal, because it's someone that was going to play mid-30s in minutes that is now not playing, and you only have 8 guys going now for Toronto.
All right, so Flynn is starting. We just got that news.
Perfect.
So it's what we expected to see anyway. I'm wondering, does he play Siakam minutes tonight?
I think he plays mid-30s.
Yeah, I was thinking so
play
too.
More, but
I think he does too. How many minutes do you give to Boucher here? And let me just preface this with, do you think in any capacity Nick Nurse would rather get more Aaron Baines out there against Vucevic, or do you not think this is a matchup worth worrying about from a Boucher to Baines traditional center to a smaller center type scenario?
Yeah, so I've kind of gone back and forth on that. I think it's one of the more interesting spots to think about on the slate, because my first thought was, we saw Boucher play 32 minutes. He started and played 32 minutes against the Lakers last game, but the Lakers were a team that it made sense. Like, Marc Gasol's not a problem. Montrezl Harrell's small. Now you get Vooch, who, from a size standpoint, Aaron Baines makes a lot more sense here. And so at first I was like, okay, maybe Boucher plays a few minutes less than people are thinking, and Baines plays more. But you could also see Boucher play the 4, especially against a Chicago team that has Lauri Markkanen, that's been giving Daniel Tyson run before. You could very easily see Aaron Baines get increased run against Vooch and still see Chris Boucher get 30 plus minutes, with some of those minutes coming at the 4. So now, I am coming back towards, they do only have 8 players. And is Nick Nurse going to say, okay, well, I want to play Baines against Vooch, I'm going to put Boucher on the bench and play, Yuta Watanabe more minutes? Or is he going to just say, okay, I'm moving Boucher to the 4 and he'll deal with Lauri Markkanen? So or Thaddeus Young or Daniel Tyson, whoever's there. So I'm leaning towards thinking Boucher most likely gets 30 plus minutes again. We know he's really productive. He's really cheap. I think you can look to a minimum salary Baines or close to minimum salary Baines. But I do think that even if Baines plays more minutes in this matchup, you still probably get substantial run for Chris Boucher.
Yep, that's where I'm at too. And that's why I said I think the Bembry news is actually huge.
Yeah, I think it is too, because it takes options away from Nick Nurse. Like
exactly. And Nick Nurse is not one of those guys that's just happy to run a back of the bench player for 25 minutes either.
Right. And especially, I mean, you've seen time and time again where like Yuta Watanabe could be in the rotation and Nick Nurse just like finds ways to play other guys ahead of him. You know, I obviously think he's in the rotation tonight since they have 8 players, but I'd be kind of surprised unless he's playing really well, then if he gets huge run, you know, ahead of someone like Boucher. So I'm leaning towards us getting some Boucher minutes alongside Baines here.
Unless it's like Stanley Johnson gets 33 minutes.
Stanley Johnson could easily get like mid-30s minutes. That wouldn't be too surprising. But again, with 8 guys, like if I project Stanley Johnson for, let's say, 26 to 30 minutes, I still have to give Watanabe 18 to 20 unless I go above 30 for Boucher. So it's really like, you know, if Watanabe plays like 16 and Johnson plays 36 and Baines plays 22, then Boucher might be in some trouble. But I don't think that it's particularly likely that all of those things happen.
Yeah, and let's not forget Boucher played 33 minutes just last game too.
Right.
So. All right, let's the rest. So we've hit on Flynn. I want to make sure we get to everything on this Toronto team. I think we agree that Boucher, particularly at that price on DraftKings, is really quite appealing. Obviously, so is Malachi Flynn. We get the news that he's starting. Talk to me about Siakam and OG Anunoby and Gary Trent, the other 3 guys that are going to be worked in pretty heavily tonight.
Yeah, I think that Anunoby and Trent are both fine just because I expect them to play big minutes. So far, Gary Trent has played 99 minutes without Lowry or Van Vliet on the floor. He has a 24.2% usage rate. So usage has been there. There's obviously a lot of it to go around. Anunoby's been playing pretty well lately overall, and I expect him to get huge minutes. So I don't love the pricing on those guys compared to some other options on the slate, but I do think that they're fine. Siakam is the guy that I'm most interested out of that group just because, you know, he played 40 minutes last game. I expect you to see something similar here. And like I was saying before, he's probably the backup point guard here. So I think he gets some run with the second unit. I think he has the ball in his hands a lot. And, you know, that on top of him probably playing a lot of minutes, he's been kind of disappointing. And if you look at, he's played 155 minutes this year without Lowry or Van Vliet. He's averaged 1.25 DraftKings points per minute. That's pretty useful if you're expecting 38 to 40 minutes from someone.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Someone in chat said, where is it? Our boy R. Cathelza says, Raptors going to let people down tonight, especially Siakam. Well, I don't totally disagree. And I'll just say this, and then we can move on. Maybe get your opinion on this too. I don't have an issue with Siakam. Now, by the way, he's only played 209 minutes without Lowry, Van Vliet, and Powell since the start of last season. But over those minutes, he has a 27% usage rate, 10% rebound rate, 23% assist rate, 1.25 fantasy points per minute. Solid numbers, but they're not quite elite. So I'm usually a little bit cautious to throw Pascal Siakam into that bucket of elites in situations like this, because I still think he's below that tier. And if that's the case, once he gets up close to that $9,000 range, I don't necessarily see him as much of a priority as others might.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you there. If they had
still a good play.
Yeah, that's where I'm at too. Like I really like Siakam. I think that there's going to be a ton of opportunities there for him. The only concern I have is what you just said. His for the season, he has about a 21% assist percentage. If you look at his numbers without Lowry and without Van Vliet, he has about a 21% assist percentage. He hasn't really capitalized on that, even though I think that he should. It's a pretty small sample. So I think that as the sample gets bigger, he does do better, but there's no guarantee there. And he certainly could disappoint. If you look at his rates under these conditions, he's been very good, but he hasn't really taken that massive step forward that I think he should.
Right. That's where I stand as well. Exactly right. I think that's it for Toronto. Let's move on. We got 2 down, but those were a couple really important spots that we needed to hit on. This game doesn't get much easier, Adam. Cleveland and OKC. So before we dive into the weeds here, we have 1 day left on the MLB promo. I hope you've done it if you haven't done it already. For $9, you get 9 days of all of our MLB content. ownership projections, player projections, the top pitchers tool, the lineup builder, and Adam, the top stack tool that I know you use every single day when it comes to baseball. I mean, all of these tools created by Awesemo himself, number 1 ranked DFS player out there to win a ton of money using these exact tools, playing MLB, all of the premium content, all of the premium articles for just $9, 9 days using the promo code starting9. I already know Jordan Klein's got it up on the screen. Don't let me down. You got it up there? Oh, he doesn't. Yeah, maybe he does. I don't know. Starting 9, all one word. There we go. At awesemo.com/promos. You see it right there. Click it. You don't even have to type in the code. You want all those tools for 9 days, a good third of a month for just $9. Please check that out. All it takes is one decent night. One night where you profit a couple dollars and you're already covering it. You have to look at it that way as an investment, right? Like it's $9. What's it going to take for you to make back that money? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. And if you want to get a free month of PGA content, all of the tools we've talked about for baseball, basketball, we got just as much, maybe more for golf, more articles, as many tools. You get 1 free month free if you buy the first month of Awesemo Plus PGA content using the promo code Dustin. Again, awesemo.com/promo. So the starting 9's good through tomorrow. Dustin's good through the 11th. Check them out. And if you have any questions, hit me up about the subscriptions. But like I said, what's it take to make back your money, to make back to get returns on something like this on $9? Pretty much nothing. Cleveland and OKC. Cleveland Cavaliers. What a scenario we've got on our hands here, Adam. You have Dean Wade, who's a .66 DraftKings points per minute guy in the 5 games where he started getting 30+ minutes. Then you have Isaiah Hartenstein and Kevin Love. Let me set you up because I have a couple thoughts here. Kevin Love didn't close last game, played the last 6 minutes or watched the last 6 minutes from the bench. Hartenstein played those last 6 minutes. It was a blowout win, believe it or not. Love has played 20, then 23, then 26 minutes in his return. Is it possible that JB Bickerstaff, after Hart played legitimate starters minutes in the first half of that game, is willing in a competitive spot, and this should be close, OKC stinks too, is willing to give Love 30 or more minutes tonight, which would directly impact Isaiah Hartenstein. So that's what I'm setting you up with. I think that could be an issue if you're getting on to Hartenstein, or you say, even if he only plays 20 minutes, maybe it's fine because his price is cheap enough. I think the front court's an interesting one tonight.
Yeah, I think it is too. I think Love plays enough minutes here to make Love a really good play. He played 26 minutes last game, like you said, which at his salary, if you assume he plays 26 minutes again, he looks good. If you think that there's room for him to play a couple more minutes, which I do, I think it's at least greater than 0 chance that he plays 28, 30, 31 minutes or something, then he becomes even better, obviously. As far as Hartenstein goes, if Love's playing more minutes, it does make Hartenstein risky. I do think it's worth noting that, you got 27 minutes last game from Hartenstein, but 5 minutes and 46 seconds of that came at the end of a 24-point win over the Spurs. So
you weren't listening when I talked, were you?
I was.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I was elaborating on what you said.
Oh, all right. Go ahead.
He played about 4 minutes alongside Love, 4 or 5 minutes, which is good to see. But he's gotten expensive enough, and on DraftKings is only center eligible. Where I think he's still got a high ceiling at 4,400, but I wouldn't feel comfortable expecting more than 20 to 22 minutes out of him. I do think you get again 26 plus out of Love. So if I could only roster one, I would go to Kevin Love. I think Hartenstein's still okay, but prefer Love here.
What are you doing with Wade?
He, the minutes are nice, but like you said, he hasn't been the most productive. He is still pretty cheap. He played 38 minutes last game. If I get to some, that's fine. I think he's cheap enough. But I think that Love comes in ahead of him. I think that between Wade and Hartenstein, it's pretty close because you're getting the minutes from Wade, you're getting the per minute production from Hartenstein. I think that it kind of comes down to ownership between those two. So I think Wade's an okay point per dollar option.
Yeah, I think it really just comes down to if you get the minutes out of him, maybe he'll be okay. But
yeah, exactly.
You need a lot of minutes from him.
He's really cheap for someone that's going to play 36 minutes.
Right, exactly. I just think Kevin Love's interesting. He's a little bit higher end than I was hoping. I was hoping everyone would be a little bit worried about those minutes. But I wouldn't be surprised if he played 30 today. I really wouldn't. I think you could get between 28 and 32 from him, but I'm not sure where he settles in. So we'll see. Do you like Sexton and Darius Garland today against just the decimated OKC squad?
I was hoping they'd be a little bit lower owned, but right now we have Sexton projected for 20% ownership on DraftKings. Yeah, Garland coming in at 15 or 16. If they were lower, I'd have been interested because I think you and I talked about it yesterday or the day before. OKC's been playing at a pretty fast pace, and they've been the least efficient defense in the league over the last month. So that's something that you had seen when they were semi-healthy, when they had Lou Dort, when Gilgeous-Alexander was in and out of the lineup. They were at least a pretty average defensive team. They've taken a step back there. So it is a good spot for Cleveland as a whole. You know you're going to get substantial minutes from Garland. You know Colin Sexton's going to play a ton of minutes. So I think both of those guys are fine. I was just hoping they'd be a little bit lower owned since we do have, some shorthanded teams where you're going to be prioritizing going to those guys.
All right. So the OKC side doesn't get any cleaner, right? Apparently it's cleaner than Roy Davis's bathroom right now. Jeez, fella. That's a hell of a story you got going on there in chat. Oklahoma City Thunder, though, are without, do I have to read all of these names off again? I do it every single day. The thing I'm curious about is, have we gotten any information on all of these guys that were out yesterday?
What do you mean?
Are they all confirmed back out again today?
Roby, Muscala, Miller, Hall, Gilgeous-Alexander, Dort, Baisley, all out.
Okay, all confirmed out.
Yeah.
I swore there was one that I was still waiting on that I hadn't seen anything on all day. Oh no, okay, Dort's out. Yep, you're right. Okay, so basically the entire team is out. Once again, Moses Brown is down to 5,100 on FanDuel. Pogachevsky, Svi Mykhailiuk, Teo Maledon. Where do we go with this team once again when so many of them, it's funny, are so many of them outside of Moses Brown on DraftKings are grouped in that exact same pricing tier?
Yeah, they're at price points where they look like good plays, but they don't look like, the best plays, especially against a slow Cleveland team. I do have some interest in a $5,300 Teo Maledon on DraftKings. He should play big minutes. He's got about a 26% usage rate in the games that he's played without Gilgeous-Alexander and without Horford. And then Bogachevsky, I think, is interesting as well with Roby out because he's been much more productive when he's gotten starts at the 4 this year and played minutes at the 4 as opposed to the 3. And that's something you see with most players. It hasn't been an exception for him. So I think he looks pretty good. Kenrich Williams, only 4,900 on FanDuel at small forward, seems to be getting into some lineups pretty easily. And then you mentioned Moses Brown's price point. I think that's a natural guy you could use as a pivot away from a $5,200 Andre Drummond, for example, because even though we know Moses Brown is volatile, he does give you block upside. He does give you rebounding upside, and certainly could outperform an Andre Drummond who does have the question marks.
I'm going to get to this Kuzma news circling back in just a second. I think Adam already covered it for the most part, but for those of you tuning in late, we got you covered here. Hit that thumbs up while you're at it. You know the goal, 500, 600, 700. I don't know. Let's go for 500. We got 170 to go. We got almost 2,200 people watching. Please do not bring shame to the family name when they hear that I only had 330 likes with 2,200 people watching the deeper dive on a Thursday night. Are there any other thoughts on OKC that stand out to you, site specific, anything we got here?
FanDuel pricing on Svi Mykhailiuk is still broken.
Okay. So let me back up for a second. Lakers, you kind of already said where you were going, said it doesn't affect all that much. But to recap, we have no Kuzma now. Taylor Horton-Tucker is suspended. Don't play him. I saw those comments in chat. Don't play him. And then LeBron and Anthony Davis remain out. Andre Drummond is playing, and I'm assuming he gets another start. So Kuzma's absence one more time. Sorry to make you repeat yourself, but you know how we do here. Where are you going with the Lakers now that we get this Kuzma news, which is pretty significant?
Yeah, I don't think that it's not the type of news where there's one guy that you look at and just say, oh, he's clearly going in, 90% of my lineups or something. I think it's most likely, I think it improves the range of outcomes for guys like Markieff Morris, Alex Caruso, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. All of those guys become a little bit more viable because they're players that obviously not fully healthy, but minus James and minus Davis, full healthy team. I was expecting around 30 minutes from Morris. Now without Kuzma, I think there's a pretty good chance you get 33 or 34. I was expecting 24 minutes from Caruso. I think now without Kuzma, there's a pretty good chance you get 28 minutes from Caruso. Ben McLemore is available, so he will soak up some of those minutes, I would assume. Wesley Matthews probably plays about 24 minutes, which is one of the most useless things you can say in NBA DFS. So the presence of McLemore, the presence of Matthews, the fact that they could go to one other guy off the bench is the reason why, even though Kuzma's playing 34 to 36 minutes, that's the reason I don't think that there's a huge increase for anyone. I don't think that, there's one guy that's productive that goes from playing, like if Taylor Horton Tucker were active, it would be a really, really big deal. But because he's not, you're going to just get minutes going to a bunch of guys that either aren't in the player pool or are not very good from a fantasy standpoint. But I do think it improves the range of outcomes a little bit for Caldwell Pope, Caruso, and Markieff Morris.
All right. So would you say there's a top option in context or in relation to the whole slate now?
I don't think so. Caruso, I could see. I haven't run lineups yet. I don't know if you end up needing like a $3,800 guard. I could see rolling the dice on Caruso, but again, it would be sort of. I would need to really like the rest of my lineup
for sure,
not be able to find a way around it.
All right, that makes sense. Let's talk about Milwaukee and Dallas then. The Bucks are not expected to have Giannis Antetokounmpo tonight. He's doubtful with that ailing knee, which means now that you have Holiday, you have Chris Middleton, Bobby Portis, and the like. So I was writing the deep dive today. I covered for you on Thursdays. You do almost every other day. And I really was digging into a few things at point guard, right? Because I'm looking at ownership and I'm seeing, man, you've got a few of these guys that are just way higher owned than Drew. And one of them was De'Aaron Fox. And I get it because you say, all right, well, do I want to pay that much for Drew Holiday? Now, of course, their ownership has since gotten much closer, as it should have. I was at one point, De'Aaron Fox was like half, or Holiday was half the ownership of Fox, Adam. And I'm sitting there thinking, Drew Holiday has been a stud lately. He's averaging almost 1.5 fantasy points per minute over his last 5 games, and he's shooting extraordinarily well. He's played 5 games without Giannis this year. He's got 38, he had a 40, he had a 27, then he had a 64 and another 64. And it just looks like, yeah, maybe it feels pricey for Drew Holiday on FanDuel, DraftKings, 8,100. I don't really care, though. I'm just going to have a tough time getting away from Drew. We'll get to Middleton, but with the way he's playing, the ceiling is really there for Drew Holiday.
Yeah, I have a tough time getting away from him as well. In the 4 games he's played with Middleton and without Giannis, he's averaged 1.5 DraftKings points per minute. He's averaged 34.3 minutes per game. 37.5% assist percentage, 27.7% usage percentage. And I think the thing is, like, there was a pretty prolonged stretch this season where Drew Holiday was just kind of another guy. He was averaging, 1.05 to 1.1 DraftKings points per minute. And it was kind of easy to forget how good he can be and how good of a player he is. He's just in a situation where Giannis dominates so many stats in so many areas. It's like, it's obviously not comparing him to Eric Bledsoe, but it's kind of similar to how Bledsoe just disappears when the Pelicans are healthy because he's good at everything. He can score, he can rebound, he can assist, but that team, everyone on that team does those things. It's kind of the same thing with Milwaukee when Giannis plays because he just takes such a large percentage of all of the stats on the Bucks that when he's out, Holiday is very capable of picking those up. Middleton's a very good player as well, but it seems like gets slept on how good Drew Holiday is. And so maybe he doesn't keep averaging 1.5 fantasy points per minute. Like, that's a lot, but he doesn't need to keep averaging that to be productive or to pay off the salary. Dallas has been the slowest team in the league over the last month. I think that would be one concern. But outside of that, I don't really see a reason why the salary should be scaring you off of Holiday. He's been playing better in general anyway. And, the minutes have been up, and then now you're getting Giannis out, and Holiday is a guy that can pick up those stats in every category, basically.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. I think there's so much to love about Holiday. And has he had a couple ugly games or one ugly game without Giannis? He's had 2 in the 60s, in the mid 60s. He can. And one of them, Adam, by the way, was against Indy where he only played 30 minutes. So there's just so much to like here. 1.42 DraftKings points per minute in the 5 games without Giannis. What about Middleton here? I know your obvious answer, of course, like, yes, you got to play Middleton, but let's dig into this a little bit further. Middleton's $7,800 on DraftKings, and on FanDuel, he's $8,200. How much do we like him today? As much as Holiday? And if you could only play one of them in the lineup, which one would it be?
I still like Middleton a lot. I'm a little concerned because he's been pretty disappointing in these games without Giannis, but the rates are still there. In the 4 games he's played without Giannis and with Drew, 28.9% usage rate, 24.3% assist percentage. He's only averaged 1.18 DraftKings points per minute, 54.2% effective field goal percentage, 47.6% shooting from 3 in those games. So it's not like he's, I was kind of hoping to look and see that he had shot like 20% or something, but I think it is concerning that he hasn't produced it as quite as high a rate as you would like, but he is still pretty inexpensive. He's cheaper than Holiday is. He's at a tougher, more difficult position to fill at small forward. So if I can only roster one, I think I lean toward Drew just because he has been the more productive of the two by a pretty wide margin. And they have similar usage, but you get, the assist bump for Holiday. They're close enough in price where I would lean toward Holiday, but I do think they're obviously two of the better plays on the slate.
Yeah, me too. And by the way, we had a couple of questions in chat that we forgot to talk about Taurean Prince. Let me just go back to that for 1 second. To me, it's similar to someone like Sadiq Bey that we'll get to. Not very good, but I think he'll play minutes. He's had a couple decent games in a row, and Oklahoma City's dead last in defensive rating over the last month, top 7 pace. So it's not as much Prince is good. It's that OKC is really bad, and this is a pace-up spot for Cleveland. So I think he's fine if no other great value pops up. You have any thoughts on Prince real quick?
I think I'm pretty much there. I think he's fine. You're probably getting like 26 to 28 minutes. He's sort of like the Ford version of Alex Caruso as far as the way that I view him in my lineups. Like if I crunch a lineup and I really like it and has Taurean Prince in it, that's fine because I expect him to play 26 to 28 minutes and pay off his salary. It's not someone I'm overly excited about. I think there is, some chance that he closes. Like you could get him closing over Okoro or over Wade potentially, but I think more often than not, he's not going to be in the closing lineup, which kind of keeps him in that 26 to 28 minute range.
All right. Someone asked, would you rather have Middleton or McCollum? Look, I know when it comes to Middleton, we've said some things that might be interpreted as somewhat disparaging, but I'd still rather have Middleton without Giannis. The rates just back it up way too far.
I think it actually would be kind of close, except for you have McCollum playing Utah too, isn't really
well, that's what I mean. Yeah, exactly. The spot just isn't very pretty. Nurkic is active, by the way. How do you feel about Portis, who got a start yesterday? For me, it's if he starts, I love him. He played 20 minutes, but didn't close. If he comes off the bench, I'm a little skeptical at that price point that he only plays like 23, 24 minutes.
Yeah, that's the big thing for me as well, because we'd seen earlier this year, we thought Portis was going to start with Giannis out, and they started Pat Connaughton instead. In that game, Portis played a few minutes alongside Lopez, but he was more or less the backup center, and he was still really productive. He still did fine for his salary, but you definitely saw the minutes be a lot riskier when he comes off the bench. So if he starts, then by all means, $5,300 Bobby Portis, the guy averages well over a fantasy point per minute, and you can count on him getting, 26 to 30 minutes, basically. If he comes off the bench, I would pump the brakes quite a bit, especially because with this being a game that starts an hour and a half after lock, there's a decent chance, like if he comes off the bench, we'll probably find that out after lock, and people don't really like to late swap. You're going to get, even though like Portis off the bench could still pay off the salary, he's almost guaranteed to be higher than he should be if we get news that he comes off the bench.
Right. That's a good way to put it. Any thoughts on the rest of Milwaukee, some of these kind of auxiliary plays?
I don't think so. I mean, talked about Middleton, talked about Drew. DiVincenzo probably plays 30 to 32 minutes, but doesn't stand out as a priority for me here. Brook Lopez doesn't really benefit much from Giannis being out. So I think it's Drew, Middleton, and Portis as the guys that I would consider any sort of priority.
All right. Dallas. Yusuf Nurkic, Luka Doncic, Kristaps Porzingis playing the second of a back-to-back. Josh Richardson's just brutally bad. The top here, though, goes to Luka Doncic. He's 10-9 on DraftKings and 10-3 on FanDuel. I mean, you've got to be kidding me, man.
Yeah, it's really tough not to love Luka today. I mean, this is the first slate in a while where he hasn't had other guys to contend with. It seems like every time we've talked about Luka, it's been like, Luka's great, but James Harden's playing without Kyrie. Luka's great, but Westbrook's playing without Beal. You don't have that today. So you have plenty of value options. You have Luka against a fast-paced Milwaukee team that's missing Giannis, which makes them, at least a little bit less imposing defensively, even though Drew and Middleton are both very good as well. I don't really have any reason not to like Luka here. You mentioned the FanDuel price is really cheap, more expensive on DraftKings, but he's eligible at 5 different lineup positions, so it's easy to get him in. It's really, really tough for me not to like Luka. I know the conversation was happening in chat during the last show about Porzingis. Porzingis not on the injury report. That doesn't mean he's going to play. You could get late news from Dallas, but I don't really care one way or the other for Luka. Porzingis being out hasn't benefited Luka at all last year. It hasn't done it this year. His per minute production has actually decreased. At the very least, I'm comfortable saying that it's not a big bump for him in terms of fantasy production. Yeah. So Luka, one way or the other, I don't care what happens with Porzingis.
That's kind of where I come in on this too. It's not like, oh, he's a worse play without Porzingis, but it's not something that moves the needle for me. I can tell you that much.
Yeah. The only reason that I ever say it matters is that people think it matters. So the ownership jumps
Right.
when it
That's
probably
a good
shouldn't.
point.
But on this particular slate, I don't really think it matters. Like even that, he's going to be one of the best plays on the slate with or without Porzingis.
Yeah, good point. Let's speed this one up a little bit. Fortunately, those first 4 games are the ones that are going to take the longest, and then the Detroit-Sacramento game. So let's get through these ones. Phoenix and the LA Clippers first, or Phoenix Clippers, Portland, Utah. Let's start it off with Phoenix and the Clippers. The Phoenix Suns in the Staples Center, 6-point dogs, 221 total. The only thing going on here is Serge Ibaka's out for the Clippers. Aside from that, we're looking at 2 pretty healthy teams. Take both sides of this one, Adam, because there's truly not much on either side of this game that I'm interested in at all.
Yeah, I mean, two pretty much healthy teams here. I think that Paul George is still cheap on DraftKings at 8,200. Kawhi is probably a little bit underpriced. He's someone, that would naturally work as a pivot off of Luka Doncic if you were trying to get away from him. But neither one really stands out as a priority here, just in the context of the slate, because it is a fully healthy team. Both of these guys, Kawhi and George, average about 1.3 DraftKings points per minute when they're healthy. I think that relative to each other, George is, a little bit underpriced, but more of just a contrarian or secondary tournament option. You can say the same thing for Zubac, should get 30 to 32 minutes here, average around a fantasy point per minute, but there's just other guys that I like a little bit more. As far as the Phoenix side goes, basically the same thing. The pricing on DraftKings is still extremely expensive. A little bit more favorable pricing on FanDuel, but not exactly cheap there either. You can always make a case for Booker, Paul, or even Ayton in tournaments, but outside of they're good at basketball and are capable of having a big game, there's nothing like specific about this matchup that makes me point to them.
9 likes till we're at 500. Let's get there so Jordan can ring that bell. I want to talk about Portland and Utah. Before we do, quickly, let's say something and say hello to our sponsor over there at Jock Market. I think a lot of us that play DFS also like crypto, also got into the Top Shots deal and got into the stock market, whether it's trading, whether it's investing, maybe you're day trading, swing trading. I don't know. We've all got our own thing, right? But Jock Market has turned fantasy sports into a stock exchange. So you don't have to wait until the end of the game to make money. They allow you over at Jock Market to buy and sell shares of players in real time for real money with guaranteed payouts for all the shares at the end of the night. So you got daily markets for baseball, basketball, hockey, golf, and you can make real money every hour down to the minute, down to the second. You can make money over there at Jock Market. You can also, and this is the cool part about all of it, right? This is what kind of brings everything together. They have a pregame IPO where you can use it to pick up shares of your favorite players. Then you can buy them, sell them, or hold them during the game based on your analysis, based on what you're seeing. So you fancy yourself someone that's sharp enough to make the right moves, to get out at the top, maybe buy when there's blood in the streets, as they say. You would love Jock Market. And you'll also love the fact that if you use the promo code Awesemo NHL20, why is AWESEMO NH? So there's, okay, awesome. So what are they, the same thing? They do the same thing? Okay. Awesemo 20 or Awesemo NHL 20. I guess use either. Try both. Maybe you'll get 40, but you get $20 upon your first deposit. Take advantage of that. Download the download the Jock Market app. Now you get me thrown off. Download the Jock Market app. Check it out. And again, I think it's a cool twist on the way we do things, playing fantasy sports and being involved in the market as well. All right, Portland and Utah. Adam, we don't have anything to worry about when it comes to Yusuf Nurkic or Norman Powell. This is a healthy Blazers team for the first time in a while. Anything you like here with them on the road as 6-point dogs? 233 total. Came up 4 points since I last looked.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's kind of similar to what I just said about Phoenix. Like, obviously, Damian Lillard can have a monster game. Obviously, TJ McCollum can go off. He's been great this year, even in games with Lillard, averaging about 1.2 to 1.25 fantasy points per minute. They don't stand out like as top plays, but whoever had mentioned McCollum versus Middleton earlier, there should be a pretty big ownership difference there, and that's where it starts to become interesting. Right now, you only have about 13% ownership on DraftKings going to McCollum. You have about 26 going to Middleton, so you're getting like 2-1 there. If Middleton increases a little bit, McCollum comes down. It's the kind of spot where if you're playing a bunch of lineups, you can get some McCollum there. But it is a tough matchup against Utah defensively. They have been playing at a faster pace recently, which is nice. But outside of just saying that Lillard and McCollum are really good and can score a lot of points, there's nothing that looks particularly good here.
Okay, agreed. Two things from chat. Jim Paris says, I don't know if I should play Middleton and Holiday in the same lineup. He's got the Awesemo badge next to his name. So, try and hook my boys up. Yes, you can absolutely play Middleton and Holiday in the same lineup. And then somebody else said something, and now I just forget what it was, but I thought it was somewhat important, and I lost it. Oh, it was Brown or Drummond, assuming that's on FanDuel. Moses Brown at 51 or Drummond at 52. I feel like I want to go Drummond here.
It's an ownership thing for me, and right now it's about the same or close enough. I would go Drummond the way it stands right now. 25% going to Drummond, 18% going to Brown. I think that either one is fine. They have kind of similar concerns, but I would lean Drummond.
Okay. What are our thoughts on the Utah Jazz? Clarkson's doubtful. Donovan Mitchell is good to go, but more so Mike Conley isn't on the injury report. We'll assume that he plays for now. Mitchell going to get a lot of ownership at $7,800 on FanDuel. DraftKings, I'm not as excited about that $8,600 price point, I think, as everyone else is. Maybe you can convince me otherwise and tell me why I should be all for 30% Donovan Mitchell at $8,600 on a night where there's a ton of mid-range options.
So I'm with you at first look, but I think he also seems to fit pretty nicely into lineups just because he showed up in the early crunch that I did on DraftKings. So it's one of those spots where I don't want to completely knock it because I think he might just be getting ownership because you end up with $8,700 or $8,600 on DraftKings and he's the best guy available because it is a good spot against Portland. It's a bad team defensively. We know Mitchell is very, very good. And Clarkson being out is a big deal because even though Clarkson doesn't start, Mitchell and Conley have their minutes staggered. And so whereas you would get some run with Mitchell playing alongside Clarkson, now you're getting Mitchell not playing alongside Clarkson, who's a 28 to 30% usage guy. So it is a bump for Mitchell, even though Clarkson comes off the bench. I think Mitchell is a very good play. Obviously, the salary on FanDuel is more appealing than DraftKings, though.
Okay. Any other thoughts on Utah? I'm very excited to get to this Detroit-Sacramento game, so I'll let you close this Utah one out.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a good spot for Utah. Gobert, if you get to some of him, obviously a really high upside play. Ingles probably plays a few more minutes with Clarkson doubtful. Bojan could pick up a couple minutes as well. I think Mitchell's the number one priority from the Jazz. Then I think you can look to guys like Gobert, Conley, Ingles, but they don't stand out quite as much as Mitchell does to me.
Okay. No Plumlee news yet, but we will let you know if we get it. That's why you got to stick around. Got to stick around right after the show because you got Live Before Lock coming up, and they're going to get you everything you need to know exactly leading up all the way to 7 o'clock, right? All the way up to 7 o'clock. I think it's actually through 7:30. No, well, up till 7:30, sorry. And then till 8, because you got the Jock Market show. Greg Ehrenberg, Eric Lindquist, check them out. By the way, we just went from 580 likes to 518 likes. We actually went down 62 now we went down to 508. What's going on? What is happening? This is
feels like my Top Shot account.
Look at this. You're just plummeting like a rock. I don't know what's going on. I almost feel like we need you guys to fight back against whatever bot activity is going on here and outweigh this. There we go. Look at that. We're cruising by 535. Let's go. Oh, I love it. We went down like 100 likes in a minute. And look at this. Oh, dude, pushing back. See, buy the dip, baby. Eat that up. I love it. Let's talk about Detroit and Sacramento. And remember, guys, if you use the avatar, Awesemo, and you finish top 3 in any contest, 5,000 people or more, you win a free month, $99 value of Awesemo Plus. Go to awesemo.com. I think it's /avatar, Jordan. /avatar, yeah. And make that your avatar in case you win. Get another free month. So no Jeremy Grant. Mason Plumlee may or may not play. This is a wild scenario because they're facing the worst defense in the league. Top 11 pace Sacramento team. No one allows more points in the paint than the Kings. I mean, Adam, on all fronts, no matter how bad Detroit is, no matter how bad they've been getting smoked lately, this is a really good matchup for guys like Josh Jackson. And if Plumlee plays him, and if he doesn't play Isaiah Stewart, there's a lot that we could potentially like here. And this could have a big effect in tournament winning lineups tonight.
Yeah, this is a huge game. And I think it's definitely a spot where if you leave a couple of roster spots open in your lineups, you shouldn't have any trouble swapping around because pretty much there's going to be several very good options from Detroit when you consider that, Jeremy Grant's out. Obviously, Griffin and Rose no longer on the team. You're missing basically most of the high usage guys. So you're going to get a usage bump for Josh Jackson. You're going to get a usage bump for Amadou Diallo with more minutes available as well. If Plumlee's out, Isaiah Stewart becomes one of the most obvious plays on the slate, but you're not going to know that news before lock, most likely. Killian Hayes, $3,200, didn't play last game on a back-to-back, but prior to that played 25 minutes off the bench. They have every incentive to get him run. He's just kind of been working his way back up after missing a while. So I'm expecting that we get, at least mid-20s out of him. 3,200 looks like a very good value play. There's a lot of, the Plumlee news is important, especially as it relates to Isaiah Stewart, but you still can, look to Josh Jackson, who has a 27% usage rate without those guys on the floor this year. You still can potentially take shots at Amadou Diallo. You still can look to a very cheap Saddiq Bey. You can still look to Killian Hayes, and then kind of just late swap your lineup depending on that news. Hopefully on DraftKings you're able to leave a center position open, especially if you're playing one or two lineups. All
right. So I'm waiting on this news. I doubt we'll get it, but I think Josh Jackson is in a spot where are you a little bit surprised that he's not one of the highest owned players on DraftKings? I honestly thought if he was the highest owned player, it wouldn't have shocked me, but he's not.
It wouldn't have surprised me, but I think it would have been something that I cautioned against if he was. I think he should have a very good game. The reason I'm concerned is we haven't seen Detroit play a competitive game in so long. We have no idea what their closing lineup looks like. And we know that they haven't really been, even though Josh Jackson's been starting, he hasn't really been playing in fourth quarters, but that's also because they haven't been in competitive games. I think that his playing time is risky, but I also think that when you consider how cheap he is and the fact that you're losing 32 to 34 minutes from Grant and you're losing your highest usage guy, Josh Jackson, he's not a great NBA player, but he is a productive fantasy player. He is going to take shots. He does rebound. He does get some assists. It is obviously a good matchup. I think that he's cheap enough where even though I'm willing to admit that he might not reach 30 minutes, those concerns aren't quite as important to me as the fact that he could just outperform his salary in the first half.
Fair enough. DK Longway says, LMAO ain't nobody playing Josh Jackson. Now about 23% of the field right now, 20% of the field is playing Josh Jackson. He has the highest usage rate on this team without Jeremy Grant, without Blake Griffin, and without Derrick Rose. So
yeah, and the thing is, the same concerns that I laid out for Jackson to some extent at least apply to almost everyone on this team. Like the Pistons just play so many guys. They don't really have a consistent set rotation. Like you assume Saddiq Bey is ahead of Josh Jackson in terms of priority, to get minutes. You assume Killian Hayes when he's out there because, they are first round picks and not most likely NBA busts like Josh Jackson is. But, Jackson is still a guy that's young enough and has the pedigree where if he turned out to be good, it would really help the Pistons. So, he has been getting the starts. He does get opportunities here. And like you said, 26.8% usage rate in 289 minutes without those guys on the floor, over a fantasy point per minute. I think he's underpriced. He's just risky.
Yep. All right. We are up against it. Actually, we've gone through it. So we don't take up too much time. I'll let you wrap it up with Sacramento and tell me your quick thoughts on the Kings before we head out of here for the day.
Yeah, essentially a fully healthy team with the exception of Marvin Bagley. Pretty good matchup against Detroit, though they are a worse NBA team, I think, than they are appealing DFS matchup. You still can definitely look to De'Aaron Fox here. Again, he benefits from what I was talking about with Luka, where there's not a ton of pay-up options here. So getting 37 minutes from De'Aaron Fox is pretty appealing. Definitely not a bad spot. If you get to some Halliburton, some Barnes, some Hield, those guys certainly could have big games. Same goes for Rashawn Holmes. Like all the starters, I think, are in play. Fox would be my favorite, but I don't think any of them stand out as a priority compared to some of the other guys that we've really liked.
All right, that'll do it. Hey, appreciate you guys. You were great. We'll see you back here soon, closing out the work week. Adam Scherer at ShipMyMoney DFS. Follow that man. Follow me at Laffy_D, LOUGHY_D, and Awesemo at Awesemo_com. See you back here tomorrow. It is Greg. It is Eric taking you up till lock on Live Before Lock. Peace. Later, boys.
See you guys.
What's going on?
Yo.
Yep.
Yes, sir.
It is the Awesemo NBA Live Before Lock show, sponsored by Jock Market, as per usual on Thursday. You guys know what that means. Eric Lindquist and I here. We are not only going an hour up to the NBA Live Lock, NBA Live Before Lock. It lasts an hour.
It's okay. This is your first time hosting.
Yeah, never done this before, Brandon. I don't do this like 6 times a day. But after we get to lock, Eric and I sticking around for another 30 minutes, talk about the Jock Market. And even if you guys are not currently playing on Jock Market, which you should be, go download the app on the App Store, Google Play Store, wherever you find all your phone applications. Stick around anyway, because as per usual, Eric and I always get bombarded with late scratches in the last 30 minutes we do that Jock Market show. And you could see all host of things happen. You see us update our lineups. You could see us sweat. You could see us tilt when somebody who we have massive amount of exposure to is just all of a sudden picking up a 0 in a bunch of our lineups. There's a whole host of things that could happen. So definitely stick around after we're done. Also, if you guys have not done yet, like the video, because you should like the video, because if you like it, you like it. That's the thing to do. But let's talk about this slate, because right now, the most recent news that I felt was going to have a really massive impact on my lineups and just isn't. Kyle Kuzma getting ruled out. What is that doing for you? Because it's not really opening up all that much to me, and definitely not as much as I thought it would.
Yeah, I don't think I was ever super interested. So we've seen the prices come up on a lot of these Lakers. There's so many low usage, low output fantasy options on this basketball team that are going to be filling in for some of these minutes. And I don't really know what I would want to be doing other than Drummond on FanDuel in any kind of bulk, in any kind of way, shape, or form. You got to think that this does help Drummond a little bit, just kind of coming in from a fantasy aspect. So, I mean, 5,200, it's not like I wasn't going there or the field wasn't going there, but I'm upping my exposure even a little bit more there. We don't know what those rates are going to look like, but that's certainly more rebounds that are going to be available, more shots, more garbage stats for a guy like Drummond to come in and fill up.
Yeah, and by the way, I'm getting exposure to Drummond, and I'm not comfortable with it. It went so poorly, his debut with the Lakers, if you remember correct, which, I mean, everybody remembers.
I was near lock button. It was not good.
And it was a different play, his debut, FanDuel versus DraftKings. He was 5,200 on FanDuel and 7,800 on DraftKings, if I remember correctly, his first game back. And it went really poorly. He got into early foul trouble. He sucked when he was on the court, and then he got injured as soon as the third quarter started and didn't return to the game. So I definitely have that sour taste in my mouth a little bit, but I look at this Lakers lineup, and without Kuzma there, it's who else is taking the shots when in that starting lineup when he isn't on the court? Like Dennis Schroeder is going to take some of them, but other than that, as much as Andre Drummond, I think he's not nearly as good as most people think he is from a real life perspective. He's still a guy, if you look at his fantasy stats this year, he's done really well on a points per minute basis, not just this year, but really for his entire career. And for the year, 28.3 minutes per game, scoring nearly 42 DraftKings points. That is really strong points per minute production. And I think that's probably around where he plays with the Lakers right now, somewhere in the neighborhood of 26 to 28 minutes. That probably has him approaching 40 fantasy points. So he's in my player pool. And I don't really feel great about it, but I can't look past what he's done so far on a points per minute basis. Other guys, though, like Wesley Matthews is going to be in the rotation, Alfonso McKinney, Ben McLemore, who isn't even in the player pool right now. He's making his Lakers debut today. So there's so many guys to pick up minutes that there's not one guy I could really, hitch myself to and be like, I think this is a great value play from the Lakers. I'm getting a little bit of exposure to Alex Caruso. But beyond that, did you get to any of these other ancillary pieces?
No, not really. I mean, McLemore is in the player pool over on FanDuel. He was 3,900. I looked at that for 1 second and was like, no, we're not going to do that. I don't think it's really necessary on this slate. And I think with all of the late swappability that can kind of exist coming up at 10 p.m. Eastern time, why do I want to be playing a low usage Laker for value when I could have some amazing stuff pop. And even if it doesn't, I still think I would take a lot of this Detroit value regardless of what happens with some of that. I would rather take my shots there. I also get the ability, if anything late happens, we have the Clippers, so you never know.
Yeah, well, actually, that's kind of an interesting talking point with the Clippers. I really like them as lower owned plays for this slate. And by the way, if you guys want to check out the ownership, free on Awesemo.com today. We've got for free content up on the site, NBA, MMA, and NHL ownership projections, all free. So not too much stuff more valuable than the free ownership projections. So we could freely talk about them and not feel like we're giving out any kind of information. But also, totally lost my train of thought while I was pointing that out because I wanted
Clippers.
to segue there and just totally forgot what it was. I feel like I'm just having a brain fart today.
It's okay. Well, not only that, you were on Live Before Lock for MLB this morning. I was up grinding in the MLB streets. You did a great job putting everything together there. You're back at it for Live Before Lock on NBA. I mean, that's kind of a ridiculous little day.
Oh, here's what I wanted to read. I remember what it was now. We got a super chat from Gene B. Kim. What a way for the Mets to win. Shaking my head. Eric, so he's asking you. He needs the juju from you. He needs bombs from Miguel Sano and Garlic today. I assume to win, for Gene B. Kim to win is like, what, 8th GPP in the last 5 days or something like that. And by the way, I've said this before. When Gene messages me on Twitter and says, hey, I need this player to do something, they homer like 5 minutes later, 100% of the time. So if there's any kind of book you have where there's a live bet on like Miguel Sano homering, I would go probably bet that right now.
Yeah, so 7-hole and 2-hole. I mean, you're asking for two pretty uncorrelated outcomes, but I'm hoping for you, Gene. You need a little bit of that run good. It's been a brutal stretch for you. Feel really bad for you.
We do have right here Bourbon and Barbecue in our premium Slack chat says, how many times in Live Before Lock will somebody interject, well, X got scratched, let's start over again? Actually, I mean, jokes aside, I don't really think that's going to be a massive issue with this slate. I mean, it could always be with NBA slates, but we don't have that many guys on the injury report right now. And we've already gotten past the 5:30 mark. I think it helps us a little bit that we get the 30 minutes past the slate starting just because, the injury report comes out at 5:30. So we kind of have all that settled. Like, I mean, you talked Mason Plumlee's questionable. Other than him, Maxi Kleber, that's like a really minuscule part. Everybody else is in, right? So there's like, are you expecting anything crazy? Is there anything I'm missing that you're waiting on here?
No, I'm not waiting on anything, but I will just for an overarching strategy, and tell me what you think about this, because I think that this is kind of the appropriate way to handle this slate. Right now, I took out Plumlee, and I'm basically playing the Detroit game where I'm setting a minimum of 2, maximum of 3 in every single lineup, so that I am very, very heavy on that last game, just kind of like front loading my lineups in a way, because you have 3 games. It's rare that we have 3 games. And I think that that's kind of an underrated aspect of this slate. You can swap into a lot of different combinations based on what this news is. And so if you just basically say, I'm going to get a minimum of 2 Pistons in every lineup, even if you get stuck with them, who cares? There's still good plays in a vacuum here. Should Plumlee come in, there's still going to be a bunch of usage available to guys like Jackson, guys like Bay, Killian Hayes, who could basically spike an upside. I think I'm a little higher on him today as well. I think front loading your lineups on both sites seems like something I want to do. And then you talked about the Clippers. I do only have 2 Clippers right now that I'm really looking at in Kawhi and Paul George, but I also set a minimum of 1 Clipper. So that gives me as much salary as I possibly need to be able to swap into any combination of things based on how my lineups are doing.
Yeah, so here's why I'm not concerned about the Clippers for this slate relative to other slates. So they are currently 3 games behind the Suns for the lead in the Pacific Division. And the Clippers also hold the tiebreaker over the Suns. So this is a real, as of now, so this is a really important game. If the Clippers win today, they move to 2 games behind the Suns for the division, but also have the tiebreaker over them. So if they were to finish the season tied, the Clippers would end up winning. So they essentially move to 2.5 games behind them in the standing, or 1.5 games in the standings behind them if they win today. If they lose, the Suns are then 4 games up. And that's a really, really difficult hill to climb with only about 20 games left in the season. So I expect Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, actually, I gave them a couple more minutes than usual just because of the stakes of this game. So I think that is something that is probably going a little bit overlooked by people, but that's how I approached it. I could definitely be wrong. Clippers could do something goofy. It wouldn't be the first time, won't be the last time, but that's how I think they're going to approach this game. You mentioned the Pistons right there and Mason Plumlee being out and how you're right now building your lineups, assuming he's not in. What do you think happens in terms of the starting lineup? So who would you expect to start in place of Plumlee if he's out?
It would definitely be Isaiah Stewart. Like, I think that kind of becomes the easy one for one. I think Isaiah Stewart is going to probably be my highest owned player on the front end of this news already. I have crazy exposure to Isaiah Stewart on both sites, playing 150 on DK, playing 40 over on FanDuel. And Isaiah Stewart is somebody that's just making up a big portion of my lineups because, again, with this Jeremy Grant situation as well, I think that he does see minutes already. And there's just crazy upside there that we saw expressed. That game that he did start, he went nuts in that first rotation and really kind of tempered down, didn't do anything else the rest of the game. Had he gone for like 40, 50 in this spot, I think nobody would really be batting an eye at plugging in a bunch of him at 4,100, already garnering ownership. So it's not like a surprise by any means, but I'm going to have not nearly like right now we've got him on DK right around 6%, 7%. I think I saw in the last run. I'm significantly over the field on that.
I'm going to push back a little bit here, and then you respond and tell me what you think. How confident are you in his minutes? Because the last time that Mason Plumlee was out, Isaiah Stewart started at center, and he played 21 minutes. They played Stewart 21 minutes. They played Sekou Doumbouya 23 minutes. They just went with a really deep rotation. Tyler Cook played 24 minutes off the bench.
Didn't they blow out OKC in that game?
Yes.
It was like a complete blowout.
It was a blowout, so that is something that maybe adds a little bit of variance to it. But it looks like they played, all right, how many guys did they play that game?
Popcorn
1, 2. They played Servetus, Jackson, Cook, Bay. So they played a 12-man rotation that game, and nobody played more than 25 minutes. Is that at all a concern that would cause you to maybe lower your ownership to Isaiah Stewart at all?
No, because now you're taking Grant off the floor. So I'm looking at the same thing you are here. We've got 12 guys, and a lot of them are guys in the backcourt. So you're looking at Jackson, Joseph, Isaiah Stewart. Doumbouya played like negligible minutes there. 8 minutes, 9 minutes. So I don't really even count him. I assume he would probably have to play a little bit more here, but you take Plumlee, you take Grant off that floor. Who else is playing front court minutes out of those 12 guys that you talked about? Like, who else is going to be matching up with Rashawn Holmes in that spot? For me, it's basically only going to be Isaiah Stewart. And so for me, that's kind of the stand that I'm making, where if I do get that news that Plumlee's out, I have I expect him to be one of the highest owned guys anyway, because people will late swap onto him, but I will already have those roster spots allocated. And if Mason Plumlee gets ruled in, it's not the worst play ever, but there are so many places to go with 6 teams in play that I'm not too concerned about what's going to happen, because I've already plugged in 2 extra roster spots there. And I have Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, where I'm basically getting one of each of them in just about every lineup.
Yeah, and to be clear, I really don't mind the play at all. And the other thing also, I don't think the ownership for him, unless Mason Plumlee gets ruled out like now, if it doesn't happen until later in the day, I don't think that the ownership for Stewart is going to be that significant, just because the news is going to be late enough. Some people will be able to swap into him, but a lot of people's lineup spots are already going to be taken at that point too. So it's not like he's going to be, an uber chalk, like 50% owned player or anything like that. So
which he would be if you got news right now that Plumlee was out.
Yeah, absolutely. So I do think he's a good play. I was just pushing back a little bit.
No, I liked it. I liked it.
So let's go into position by position now. Starting with the point guards, Luka Doncic is my priority pay up option on the slate for me. We do have not like a ridiculous amount of value, but there's a fair amount. Malachi Flynn, Bobby Portis, some of the OKC guys opening up at this point. So I found that I needed to pay up for somebody in the majority of my lineups, and it was Luka Doncic who I went to. He's a little bit underpriced. His salary has come down a little bit as of late, with some underwhelming performances since coming back from injury. He's been pretty consistent, like the 45 to 50 fantasy point range. So we haven't really seen, the massive upside Luka triple-double, 70 fantasy points or anything like that recently. I think this could be the spot he gets back on track, though. Pretty embarrassing loss yesterday, playing against Milwaukee today. And typically Milwaukee is not the best fantasy matchup, but Giannis is out. That's going to make a difference. The Bucks are allowing about 4 more points per 100 possessions this year when the reigning defensive player of the year is off the court. So is Luka your number one pay up option, or is there somebody else you're going to at the high end?
Yeah, because I am stacking a lot of the Pistons together. I have some spots where I want to be spending up for studs, and I can play Luka at a small forward. I think on FanDuel, 10-3 is just too cheap. I really like getting to as much of him as possible on the front end of it. He's getting a lot of ownership, and you can see we have the free ownership projections today. And so I don't feel so bad talking about everything all the time, but right around 40% right now. And I think that's about appropriate. I'm a little bit over the field because, again, I have a little bit more salary to work around with. I think that also there is the aspect, we haven't seen Porzingis play on a back-to-back here in a little while. I'm going through the game log. I don't see the last time that he really, it wasn't in March that he played a back-to-back anything. I could see him being somewhat limited, not like, to an extreme extent, but 30 minutes of him there. I see Luka basically taking over a little bit more of this usage, as you said, coming off of a bad loss. They do need to keep winning basketball games too. I really, really like Luka. Too cheap of a price tag over on FanDuel, and then small forward position over on DraftKings makes it too easy.
And by the way, because we mentioned right there about how this is a game the Mavericks need to win, I'm pulling up the standings right now. Dallas currently 7th in the West, and an outside chance to catch the Lakers, because the Lakers are going to lose a bunch of games over the next couple of weeks, with LeBron out and Anthony Davis expected to come back in about 2 weeks, but nothing imminent. So, I mean, it's possible that the Mavericks are able to catch the Lakers and jump out of the play-in game. Maybe the Lakers fall into the play-in game. And this is a point of the year. Like I said before, I was bumping the minutes for the Clippers guys a little bit. I'm starting to consider the standings now when I'm going through minutes and trying to give out rotations. Like, there are certain teams where I'm going like, hey, I don't think this team is really going to be push guys to play big minutes today. And like you said right there with Dallas, Dallas is one of the teams that I think really needs to start playing guys like Luka and Porzingis more. This is why, like you said, Porzingis has not played in many back-to-backs this year. And this might seem like a little wonky logic, but I think that Porzingis playing in a back-to-back shows a sense of urgency and leads me to think that we might see a couple more minutes out of Luka.
Yep, I like that. That becomes kind of the dog days of NBA, where you also are looking at it on the flip side of it, on teams that have nothing to play for, that are tanking, so to speak. And we got to kind of find the other side of that and be like, what are the points of like Jeremy Grant playing 40 minutes in a game, or some of these other pieces? So it goes hand in hand both ways.
All right, we do have a super chat here from Chief Big Wave. I said, who of Awesemo am I going to see at the fantasy this summer? Let's go. So I assume that he won a qualifying seat to the fantasy tournament, which is cleverly named by FanDuel. But congratulations, because that is something that's pretty cool, and definitely fun with that. And I hope you win first place. If not, if it's something that I don't win and I'm not in that tournament right now, then I hope somebody else wins, preferably a friend of mine. Somebody leaves us a super chat. So
what is it? $7? I'm going to jump in. Let's nope, $9. All right, I can throw one in there. Why not? Screw it.
There we go. Team. Try to catch up, and then what if that's where the super chat leads to? What if you qualify, you win first place now just on a win because of a super chat?
What is this? I go on a boat for the NBA Finals? Is that what I'm reading? Okay, yeah, screw it.
Yeah,
whatever.
Yeah, you become the captain or something.
Yeah, I don't need that. I don't need that in my life. Nobody needs that in their life.
All right, yeah, guys, definitely. By the way, subscribe to our YouTube channel, because if you do, Eric will become a boat captain. Those are just the rules. That's how it works. If you want to see Captain Eric, you subscribe to the YouTube channel. He'll be out there in his Minnesota Twins hat and in a tank top, getting sunburned while piloting the ship you're on.
If Byron Buxton keeps hitting homers at this rate, I will do anything that you guys want me to. I will shame myself completely. This man is on another level. This is the Byron Buxton I signed up for. This is the guy that, he's got me so irrationally excited for this year now.
But somebody said that we missed their super chat. Here it is. I scrolled up and found it from A1 Andy. By the way, sorry that we missed this before, but I scrolled up and was able to find it. Sometimes the chat moves a little fast and I just miss it. But from A1 Andy, he's saying Flynn, Trent, OG, Siakam in most of my lineups. That is a lot of exposure to the Raptors. I like Malachi Flynn a lot. Mm-hmm. I have Pascal Siakam exposure, but he's not somebody who I'm like crazy exposed to. Although actually, Siakam, I'm overweight to the field on.
I am too, yeah.
But I mean, to have all four of those guys in most of your lineups, that seems a little bit like overkill. I don't really have a significant amount of exposure to Gary Trent or to OG Anunoby. I think Anunoby's overpriced on both FanDuel and DraftKings. To me, that's overkill. Those four Raptors guys, how do you feel about them individually, and what about playing them together?
Yeah, so you got to talk about how you're allocating your salary as well. Like Gary Trent and OG are just so expensive compared to what you'd be wanting to pay for him in any situation, let alone, with Pascal in there. Like you would kind of need a whole functioning group of them out. Like we have Lowry and Van Vliet out, which is great, but like I think that's why I am overweight to Siakam, is that I just think that offensively, that's who you're playing through. Gary Trent has spiked a couple upsides here and there. OG, just that price on FanDuel rocketed up. And I just have no interest in going that direction. But when we're targeting some of these teams like Detroit, they're just so cheap. So that's the huge difference. Like these guys on Toronto, even like Malachi Flynn is not free anymore. He was free like less than a week ago. And I think that people get in a trap of continuing to play guys on the rise and they don't become super price sensitive to them. So that's my big pushback with Trent and OG, is that I just don't think you need to go there because they're too expensive.
Do you have more exposure to Flynn or Siakam? I have more exposure to Flynn today.
I have more exposure to Flynn on DraftKings. I have more to Siakam on FanDuel.
All right, fair enough. So we got to that. Sorry that we didn't see that super chat when it first came across. And one more here from Carl Anderson. Are we really trusting Porzingis to play? I mean, I am. I don't have a significant amount of exposure to him. I have him mixed into my GPP player pool, but yeah, he's not on the injury report. He hasn't been on the injury report all day. Therefore, I expect him to play unless I hear otherwise.
Yeah, I played a ton of him yesterday because that news came out late, and I generally like to go to studs under 9K that have 50 plus point upside. And he started going there, kind of died off towards the end. So that was a bummer. But yeah, he's not on the injury report until I hear otherwise. I am pretty sure that he is a go.
Let's, before we get back into position by position, there's one more question here that I think is kind of important, overarching for the slate right here from Archer Latal 22. He's asking us, what are our thoughts on Jalen Horde, who is 4,000 on FanDuel? So I think we could just take this opportunity to just go through the OKC lineup right now. They do not have very many guys active because we have Darius Bazley's out, Lou Dort is out, Mike Muscala out, Josh Hall out, Al Horford banished from the team, Isaiah Roby out, Darius Miller out, SGA out. I assume he's not coming back anytime soon. So there is a whole bunch of minutes up for grabs with OKC right now. Did you target Jalen Horde at all today? And what other Thunder players did you get to?
I don't mind it. I had a smattering of him. He's somebody that I took a look at earlier. I don't know what those minutes are going to look like. So in the context of the slate too, if I lock him in earlier, I don't have the swap ability onto Detroit guys. So I know that we keep bringing it back to that, but from a macro level, that's how I'm looking at the slate. And so I don't want to be locking in a guy like Jalen Horde. What's his minutes upside? 25 minutes. You're not looking at crazy usage by any means. I think the last couple he's been right around 20%. That's great. 4K for a shorthanded team. Don't mind it, but Pokusevski's a go. Svi's expensive and you don't really need to go there. I don't feel on DraftKings. FanDuel's a different conversation, but Jalen Horde feels a little bit thin, but I still say that knowing I have a little bit, just nothing substantial.
Yeah, so I would feel better about Horde if he was cheaper. And 4,000 on FanDuel, 4,200 on DraftKings, it doesn't seem like huge numbers, but Jalen Horde was somebody we didn't even know existed on the Thunder's roster until a week ago, right? And it's because he wasn't even on the team, right? He signed a 10-day contract with them, and we weren't even expecting him to be active or play minutes at first, and now all of a sudden he's getting some minutes, but he's not min-priced anymore either. So just considering the price has gone up a little bit, I have him in a couple of lineups, but nothing significant. So I don't think that there's anybody there that, at least of those super cheap guys on OKC, that I feel great about, mostly because, like, Jalen Horde, like I said, 4,000 and 4,200. The OKC guy that I have the most exposure to is Teo Maledon.
Okay.
Who's the one that you got to the most?
I was getting to Pokusevski here a second ago. I've just been a little bit higher on him, I think, than the field pretty much every single slate. I like his upside. He was somebody that had a crazy high block rate at the beginning of this year in limited minutes. And I kind of was like targeting that as a guy once OKC. I assumed that they were going to start tanking at some point because I didn't think they were good. And so Pokusevski was somebody that I wanted to be early on. And that's worked out pretty darn well just about every single slate. Today, I don't know. I keep kind of wavering back and forth because, again, what are the points to like push him? He is somewhat banged up. I don't know what I'm really going to do with him here yet. We still have half an hour to kind of decide, but I've generally been overweight to him, but because of Detroit, I'm probably probably going to be right around the field, if not a little bit below comparatively. Specifically on FanDuel is kind of where I'm getting to him, 5,500. I still like that number a lot. And I don't mind Teo Maledon. I just, not a guy that I've been playing a whole lot. Feel like I kind of missed the boat here in the last couple of games where he's actually spiked the upside, like last game specifically, but he played well against Phoenix and Toronto a couple of games ago as well in that back-to-back set. So there's just nobody else who's really going to be handling the ball like going that direction.
All right, we have a couple more super chats to answer here. Thanks, guys, for putting those in. From Mark Baptiste, power forward on DK, 6K or less, who is not Pokashevsky or Hero Porsche. I assume that means Bobby Portis, but if there's another player named Porsche that I'm missing, then so be that as well. It's actually Kevin Love for me, looking at the guys I've projected here. Kevin Love at 5,800 is picking up a little bit of ownership. He has ownership in the teens. But Kevin Love, we're kind of starting to see him play a normal role for the Cavaliers. Look at his last 3 games, 20 minutes, 23 minutes, 26 minutes. So the playing time is starting to trend up. The issue with the Cavaliers, I think, is going to be with Kevin Love. Obviously, his health, if he gets hurt again, that's an issue. The other thing, too, is the Cavs are going to play in a lot of one-sided games this year to finish out the stretch. I think they're going to get blown out a lot, and there's going to be games where it's like, hey, Kevin Love played really well in the first quarter and a half, and then he barely plays in the second half because the game's a blowout. But for now, where his price is, I think that he's a pretty good-looking play. Like I said, the last 3 games, the minutes are trending up, and I don't think he gets like 34 minutes per game or anything like that, but I expect him to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 today. And that's going to make Kevin Love, based on what we've seen from him in the past, a pretty good fantasy producer today. So
I'm right there with you. Yeah, I like that. Not to jump the ship on, sorry to jump the trigger on there, but I do like Kevin Love over a fantasy point per minute here, but he's generally been around 1.2, 1.3 for his career. There's nobody else there in Cleveland that you're really worried about taking away from him. He is the guy that would be there and the guy that they're committed to still. Didn't move him at the deadline, can't really move him at the deadline. Nowhere for him to really go. They are trending up with his minutes. So that gets me excited to be a little bit over the field, because would it really shock you? Like, I think that he has potential to get up to 30 minutes here very, very shortly. And knowing that for a guy who's if you just plug him in for 1 fantasy point per minute, you're looking at 30 fantasy points on just like a rudimentary math level. I like getting to an under 6K Kevin Love over on DK. That makes a lot of sense to go that direction.
Yeah. And then for you, is there any other guy that you'd consider who isn't Bobby Porsche or Pokashevsky under 6K on DraftKings? Anybody else?
So, going a little bit further down. I mean, I was on Sadiq Bey the other night. I don't like going to Sadiq Bey now that he's going to be somewhat popular. I think that's less intriguing. He's all the way down to 4,300. So if you're looking in that price range just below 6K though, Pokashevsky would probably be my next answer, 5,800. I do like taking some of the shots there. Doesn't grade out phenomenally well. And part of that is just like he's getting slotted for 32.75 minutes from Alex today. So that's going to temper expectations compared to, like, we've seen some minutes projections of like 36, 37 from him lately, just because he's a guy that I have been targeting. Just a little bit lower there. I'm probably not going to get to as much, but definitely viable. And we've seen the upside.
By the way, we did just get a fresh ownership projection from 50 seconds ago. I'm going to give out some of those numbers. By the way, ownership projections are free today for NBA, so go check those out at awesemo.com. And also like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, because that's how we're able to do stuff like give away free ownership projections. But here's some of the most owned players right now on DraftKings and FanDuel. On DraftKings, Donovan Mitchell, Chris Middleton, Pascal Siakam, Bobby Portis, and Drew Holiday. So 3 of the 5 most owned players on the Milwaukee Bucks are Milwaukee Bucks, with the news that Giannis not expected to play today. I'm not quite as high on these guys as the field is. I know that with Giannis out, they project better, but there's overall a lot of value on the slate. It's not like these guys are as cheap as they've been at other times without Giannis. Like, we have to pay a premium for these guys. Drew Holiday's 8,100 on DraftKings. He's 8,800 on FanDuel. I'm going to ask you more FanDuel specifically, but what did you do with them on FanDuel where they're really expensive?
So I think 8,200 Middleton, because it's small forward, it's hard for me not to get there. Kawhi Leonard's up to 10K. It's tougher for me to get up there compared to on DK, where Specifically, we talked about I'm going kind of one Clipper him between George in a lot of my lineups. Jimmy Butler, 9,400, different situation for him, has upside, but you're getting a discount off of both of those guys for a guy who projects out really, really close to both of them. I know you're paying the ownership, but the ownership isn't that spread out from that last round that we have between them. So I would much rather take the cheaper end with Middleton, where there is that crazy amount of usage and fantasy production that exists with Giannis out of that lineup. Jrue Holiday is a tough guy for me to be getting a feel for right now. I thought I was going to be higher on him coming into today, but FanDuel specifically 8,800. I'm getting there like just below the field, which freaks me out a little bit. We have seen some crazy upside alongside Giannis lately. He burned me really, really badly against Golden State because I late swapped like crazy into all the Bucks, and Portis was really the only one who had anything viable that you really wanted from that game. I think maybe that's a mistake for me there, but a little lighter over there. I'm getting a lot of my Bucks exposure over on DK, and that's kind of the advantage of playing two sites as well, is you don't have to like freak out so much. You still get exposure to a lot more players just because of the way pricing works out.
Yeah, so basically every time that Giannis has been out this year, I've just had ridiculous amounts of exposure to Jrue Holiday, Bobby Portis, and Chris Middleton. I have a lot of exposure to Portis today, which, by the way, ties into a super chat question we have here. Jordan Reeves asked, FanDuel cash Bobby Portis or Kevin Love, tying into all the Bucks conversation here, and we just talked about Kevin Love. I prefer Portis for cash games today. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
So yeah, there we go. Portis for both of us. See, I have a lot of exposure to Portis today because he's the one guy who hasn't been priced up, a ridiculous amount with Giannis being out. So we have Portis, who's made, I think it's 3 starts this year with Giannis out off the top of my head, and he's averaging something like 33 fantasy points in those starts. I'll bring it up really quick. Also, it's a fairly positive matchup against Dallas. Dallas is playing on the tail end of a back-to-back. So Portis has made 3 starts this year and averaging 34 DraftKings points in those starts. So we consider that, and with Middleton priced way up, Jrue Holiday priced way up, Portis is priced up a little bit, but not appropriately for me because I have him scoring over 30 fantasy points, and he's below 6K on both sides. So he's my priority play from the Bucks of those guys there. And then I'm underweight to the field on both Middleton and Jrue Holiday on DraftKings and FanDuel. And it's not to say that they're bad plays. It's a slate with a lot of viable options to me, and I feel they've been priced up to about an appropriate level.
So when you were reading those off, not to pivot completely, but it's something that I have a question about. Are you lower on Donovan Mitchell then too? Because he was one of the guys that you listed off right off the bat, where you said you were lower on all those guys. Was it just Bucks specifically out of that grouping you were talking about, or what's your Donovan Mitchell interest today?
So Donovan Mitchell, I'm about even with the field on. I meant Middleton and Jrue Holiday.
Okay,
that I'm
just double checking.
Yeah,
because I'm right at the field on Donovan Mitchell as well. So I was just making sure that I didn't miss anything where you were lower on him by any means.
Yeah, Utah is kind of another fairly tricky spot. I think that Donovan Mitchell is a good play on a points per dollar basis. Just the ownership is at a point where I think it's about correct, and so that's why I'm even with the field on him. Cash games, I definitely say play Donovan Mitchell. Here's the risk, though. Tail end of a back-to-back, and they played an overtime game yesterday. So Jordan Clarkson is out today. He is doubtful to play. He's a sprained ankle. I presume that he's not going to play. Mike Conley is playing on a back-to-back for the first time in a very long time and doing it after an overtime game. That seems a little sketchy to me. Not that I expect him to be ruled out, but how many minutes are they going to let him play? I feel like there's a little bit of risk there, and I do wonder, do they go deep into the bench and just be like, hey, we just played an overtime game last night? Like, I wouldn't be surprised if Oni is in the rotation. I wouldn't be surprised like Matt Thomas, maybe somebody like Ersan Ilyasova just pops up to play a few minutes to spell these guys because they all had to play so many minutes in a pretty high intensity game against the Suns last night. So I think Donovan Mitchell, the upside is really substantial without Jordan Clarkson. So that was why I looked at the ownership. It seemed about reasonable to me, and I just aligned myself with the field on him.
Yeah, and I don't like doing that all the time, but why not in this situation where I could see it kind of falling off both ways? You don't want to get burned by a ceiling of Donovan Mitchell on a slate like this, where I think there's still an advantage so long as you're live going into the evening window.
Here we have a couple more super chats that have come in from Aiden Queskin. I hope I didn't totally butcher that, but I probably did.
You did.
Talk about baby Giannis projections. He's going to get some run tonight.
Okay, no, I just don't. He played so well one time, and it was a slate I didn't even play, which was kind of hilarious about that entire Bucks situation. It was a Saturday, and it was like my only day I haven't played NBA DFS, and I was kind of waiting for like a Thanasis opportunity to be able to capitalize there, but yeah, just don't do it. I mean, he played 19, 20 minutes, and it was a competitive spot that he still was getting like extended run in that last time out, but there are such better spots to be going on this slate.
I feel bad for Thanasis that people realize that he's Giannis's older brother? Like he's older than Giannis by 2 years, I think it is.
That's crazy because he's like much shorter as well, right? Isn't he like?
I mean, how much? Like you can't be much taller, right? Giannis is 7 feet tall. He's going to be taller than just about everybody. So it's not like that's a slight. But I mean, I'm the oldest of 4 siblings. If anybody was like, like you're like baby Ben or whatever, I'd be like, that's kind of offensive. Like I'm older than him, but. Yeah, I wouldn't want to be called my younger brother's baby or anything. By the way, I assume that's what he meant by baby Giannis.
Yeah, I'm 6'2". My little brother's like 6'4". It's kind of strange. Yeah, it's just like a bigger dude than I am, and it's always kind of a thing, that's for sure. But yeah, Giannis is the gigantic baby there.
So to your point before, Thanasis played 20 minutes last game without Giannis. The game before Giannis, he played 9 minutes. So yeah, he's going to be in the rotation, but not enough to really be fantasy significant for this slate. There are other places I'd much rather go for value. Other super chat we had here, scrolling to find it. Here we go from Mr. Papa Giorgio 10. Boy, we must have the first 9 already taken.
Put $1 and got a car. Put $1 and got a car. Put $1 and got a car.
For a DK GPP, would you go Vucevic and Paul George or Luka Drummond?
Definitely Luka Drummond for me.
Yeah, Luka's a core play for me. He's somebody I have in a lot of my lineups. He's my preferred pay-up option, so that has to be the response for me. Let's see. I think I covered all the super chats. Jordan messaged me if I didn't get all of them because we were we get the chat moves fast sometimes and miss some of those we come across. We did get a starting lineup for the Los Angeles Lakers.
Yeah.
So it is Dennis Schroeder, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Wesley Matthews, Markieff Morris, and Andre Drummond. So Drummond in the starting lineup there. Does that starting lineup, does that do anything for you?
No, it just makes me happy that I'm over the field on Drummond. I was planning on being it anyway. I saw no way around him playing big minutes. I mean, obviously you wanted to see him starting, but for the most part, there's nothing about that is surprising. It doesn't increase my interest in Caldwell Pope or Matthews or any of those guys. I mean, what a just disgusting lineup.
Yeah, it is no good. And that's also why, I mean, we were talking about Dallas before. Dallas, a legitimate chance to catch the Lakers in the standings because the Lakers have a very difficult schedule coming up and they might struggle to win a lot of those games. They're the biggest underdog on tonight's slate. The Heat are favored by 9.5 points over the Lakers. And the next biggest spread is Sacramento is a 7.5 point favorite over the Detroit Pistons. So other guards, we kind of got sidetracked a little bit there, but I was talking about Luka a little bit. Let's do it this way because I think people like when we do this. I have lineups on DraftKings today. I didn't play on FanDuel. I know that you did play on FanDuel, I presume. Mm-hmm. So let's go top 2 most rostered players at each position. On DraftKings for me at point guard, it is Malachi Flynn and Luka Doncic. No real surprises there. Okay. Any issues for you with that combination?
No, I haven't even ran my new crunch here yet for DraftKings. I'll give you my FanDuel. So you do the DraftKings side of it. I'll do the FanDuel. So my top 2 are Luka Doncic and Mike Conley, who we haven't even talked about yet. Mike Conley is somebody that I'm higher on just basically because I think the field should be higher on him than they are. You take Clarkson off, you have 29% usage that is going towards Donovan Mitchell. And I think that's kind of where everybody on the field is going. I'm kind of taking an overweight approach to De'Aaron Fox and Mike Conley. I'm a little lighter on Drew Holiday over there. I think that just gives me a little bit of leverage that I'm looking for. But for the most part, like Mike Conley, I think has a ceiling game there. I think you've been higher on Mike Conley too in a couple of the talks that we've had. I'm curious what you think about him today because we haven't even brought him up.
We actually did talk about him very briefly before when we were talking about Donovan Mitchell, but you're not going to like my take here. So last night, Mike Conley played a season high 35 minutes. Mike Conley does not usually play 35 minutes. I only gave him 28 minutes today. I think they're going to dial back his playing time a little bit. Haven't seen anything definitive on that. That is just a guess for me. So I ended up with not getting exposure to Conley on DraftKings. Now, with that said, Conley is priced over 7,000 on DraftKings, so he's a little bit different on FanDuel versus DK. So I'll ask, how confident are you that Mike Conley, after not playing a back-to-back since, see, when was the last time he played a back-to-back?
I bet he hasn't played one all year since, or at least since February. Yeah, he played the 4th and the 5th. I'm looking at Atlanta and Charlotte. He played 22 and 20 minutes working his way back. Just absolute blowouts in both of those two. That's kind of what Utah does. But yeah, 35 minutes. I guess that is something that I should probably be factoring a little bit more. But even like 32 minutes of him in this spot, there's just so much available usage there. You take Clarkson off a floor. I think he could still be fine. A little bit of a discount from the upper range of dudes as well. Gets a little bit higher than Caruso and Killian Hayes and some of those other guys and those mismatch of characters. I think Malachi Flynn is probably somebody that I could get a little bit higher on in that mid-range at 6K, just maybe get like even 10%, just strip away like 10% off Conley there.
All right, we have a super chat here from another one from Jordan Reeves, who says Drummond or Richard Holmes. I think he means Rashawn Holmes. I'm actually positive he means Rashawn Holmes. But Drummond or Richard Holmes, who scores more fantasy points today? I have Holmes projected for more, but these guys are also in different price ranges. Holmes is 6,500 and Drummond is 52. So Drummond is a better points per dollar play, but if it's just between the two, I'm $1,300 more for Holmes. I'm not leaving the $1,300 on the table.
Exactly.
So that is where I feel there. But yeah, I mean, I have more exposure to Drummond than Holmes, but just because there's a massive price gap between the two of them. So you said Conley, and who is your other point guard?
Oh, it was Luka Doncic.
Okay, perfect.
Yep.
So we are on board there. And by the way, somebody, our friend Butthole Jenkins asked, why Luka today? You have to pay up for somebody. There's a decent amount of value on the slate. And to me, Luka is the high-end option that I've projected for the most fantasy points. If we look at some of the other...
It's so hard for him to burn you if he puts up 45 or 50. Like, that's the other thing. Like, with so much value that's available in the other parts, like, even if you got the same production, it's not like yesterday where you had a number of those studs like Jokic and Towns and other guys to be paying up for. There's just nobody else to go up there. So it's so unlikely that he burns you. And I think you have to be able to look at every slate differently rather than just, oh, Luka Doncic didn't play well for the last 5 outings. Like, that's not the point. The point is that there's better value. Sorry, I got heated.
No, I'm with you. I'm pretty fired up about Luka myself, but also look at the slate, right? In terms of guys to pay up for. No Giannis tonight. So after Luka, like the next stud options, it's like Donovan Mitchell, De'Aaron Fox, Vucevic, Kawhi, Damian Lillard, but he's playing against Utah, Paul George. So those guys in their own right, like I don't think any of them are awful plays, but Luka is a tier above those guys. And when there's enough value on the slate that we could spend up for, to me, it just makes sense to get a whole bunch of Luka exposure. So therefore, I am pretty high on Luka for this slate. At the shooting guard position, did you have something you wanted to say?
No, I was just nodding my head in agreement. You were smart. That's all.
Well, thank you. The shooting guard position. Paul George and Donovan Mitchell are my 2 most exposed shooting guards.
All right. I just was doing my DK thing over there. FanDuel, Paul George, Josh Jackson.
Okay, so you are on the same page as me there with Paul George a little bit. Now, here's a question about Josh Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
So you said that you were assuming that Mason Plumlee will not play tonight, and that's impacting your lineups. If Mason Plumlee plays, how is that going to change Josh Jackson for you?
I think it probably will stay it'll stay close. So we also have a great matchup. If I get stuck with Josh Jackson, who I think is still a decent enough play at 4,400, we're trying to target ceilings in tournaments as well. And 4 games ago, you saw against Washington, which I would think is kind of a like-minded matchup to Sacramento. Washington plays at much more pace. They're the fastest team in the league. Sacramento, worst defensive efficiency in the league. So kind of tit for tat there. But I like the ability that Josh Jackson has to go out and just kind of assert himself. And you're taking Jeremy Grant off the floor. So I like Josh Jackson kind of regardless. I know some people are saying Hamidou Diallo or whomever else, but like Josh Jackson to me takes a bunch more shots in this scenario. So I'm happy to get to him either way. 4,400 is just cheap already. And I find it difficult for him not to at least get the opportunity to put up a ceiling game today.
And now that I think about it, I remember way back earlier in the show, I thought you made a pretty good point about why you were getting exposure to guys like Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. By the way, a totally different reason than I'm getting exposure to them, but I kind of like both of our reasons. So for me, I'll explain my reason, you could explain yours. So for me, like this is a very high leverage game for the Clippers. This is their most important game of the season to this point. They are 3 games behind the Phoenix Suns in the divisional standings. If they win, they go to 2 games back, and they also hold the tiebreaker over them. If they lose, they're 4 games back, and they're tied for the tiebreaker. Really tough to catch up. So with that in mind, I gave Kawhi Leonard and Paul George each a couple of extra minutes in this game. I think they get a little bit longer leash and play more. But you also, I thought, had a pretty sharp reason to play them more.
Yeah. So my reasoning, if you guys are just tuning in, basically, I think that they're 2 of the higher priced guys that I would be happy if I got stuck with Paul George or with Kawhi Leonard in a bunch of lineups, I'm not going to be batting my eye at anything. But this gives me the utmost amount of swappability on this slate because they are higher priced. They allow me the salary to be able to kind of mix match how my lineups are doing in that early window. A lot of people just think of late swap as reacting to injury news, and that's probably the least of it for me. I react to how my lineups are doing throughout the night. So if I have certain lineups that are doing well, I can get into some of the chalkier builds or the best plays, so to speak. If my lineups aren't doing well, or if I have to play catch up on something, it allows for me to get to lower own pivots and be able to react if there is something surprising that happens as well.
It is funny, the strategy of DFS sometimes where I projected guys different than you, but we just wind up on the same plays for just totally different reasons. And
yep.
I think they're both valid reasons to like them though. So another super chat here from B_Hawk, who's asking Andre Drummond or Moses Brown. Moses Brown, what a fall from grace. I was ready to call him the next Wilt Chamberlain 2 weeks ago. And he's done nothing but disappoint ever since. So Moses Brown, I have very, very small amount of exposure to him. I have a lot more exposure to Andre Drummond for this slate. I just don't know what to make of that OKC front court, Moses Brown in particular, who's just been so disappointing lately. So
they brought in a good center. They brought in Tony Bradley, who Joel Embiid was calling basically his predecessor. And then all of a sudden he gets traded the next day after he played awesome against Golden State in that game. So I don't really know. I think that's kind of a fault of OKC. If they were trying to get the kid confidence, they paid him and then basically said, oh, well, we can also get this Tony Bradley cat and play him alongside him. That'll be fun. Hasn't gone well.
Yeah, and the other thing too is that we've seen with Tony Bradley, every timeshare situation he's been in this year, total nightmare for DFS. Remember all the Dwight Howard chalk slates where it's Tony Bradley or Dwight Howard, and Dwight Howard would be chalk and Tony Bradley would play the minutes, and Tony Bradley would be chalk and Dwight Howard would play the minutes. Same situation here. It is just a total nightmare. So I have a little bit of exposure there, but nothing too significant that I'm overly invested in. I just have very, very minimal confidence in the minutes there. It is a tricky one for me. So that was the shooting guard position we just went over. So now small forwards, the small forwards that I have the most exposure to. Well, Luka also a small forward on DraftKings, and I'm pretty spread out at the small forward position. So there's not one guy that I have a crazy amount of other than Luka, but Kenrich Williams is the other small forward that I have the second most of right now. Not something I feel overly confident in, but I have a bunch of guys who I just have around 10 to 15% of, Chris Middleton, Pokashevsky, Taurean Prince even in there, Kenrich Williams. So there's a whole bunch of guys that I go down. There's not one guy other than Luka. I have a bunch of it small forward on DraftKings. For you on FanDuel, who are your top 2 most rostered small forwards?
I think it makes sense from what we were talking about. Kawhi Leonard, Chris Middleton. And then if you want to go right to that next tier, 30% of the guys, Kenrich Williams, Sadiq Bey.
Yeah. And Kawhi is a guy who also, while I have exposure to him, I have more exposure to Paul George just because of price. Kawhi, 9,400, Paul George a lot cheaper. So Kawhi is another guy who, I have 10% of on DraftKings just because he's not quite as cheap as I would like. But of the 2 Clippers guys who I give extra minutes to, I prefer Paul George. The power forward position, Bobby Portis, that's kind of an obvious one to me. And then Pascal Siakam is number 2 for me on DraftKings as of now. What about you for power forward? Anything wildly different than that?
Yeah, well, one wildly different, and it should make sense from everything I've said. Isaiah Stewart, my highest on power forward. Pascal Siakam, Bobby Portis, 1, 2, 3.
Okay. And then kind of similar question to what I asked you about Josh Jackson before. What do you think you'll be pivoting to? Let's say we find out at 9:30 Eastern time, so 30 minutes before the Pistons game starts. Let's say people are on the same page as you. They assume Mason Plumlee's out. They're loading up on Isaiah Stewart. We find out 30 minutes before that game starts, Mason Plumlee is playing. What do you do with Isaiah Stewart in that situation?
So I have 3 games, and I will have 4 roster spots minimum because I have a minimum 1 Clipper, I have a minimum 1 Utah Jazz, and I have a minimum of 2 Detroit Pistons. So I find it difficult that even on FanDuel, I wouldn't have some kind of swappability with 4 positions open in every single lineup. That's the way that I look at it. I think it makes it easier than me having to stress about that fact right now. I'm basically just building it with Stewart in mind. And then I have like the most swappability that I could possibly have to be able to get to where I need to go.
Okay. I think that is totally reasonable. So the last position to talk about here, centers. And let's see. It's funny on DraftKings because a lot of the guys, centers, they also have eligibility to other positions. So it's guys that we have already talked about. So Chris Boucher and Andre Drummond right now. And oh boy, do I feel just 2 totally safe plays. Never any variance there. Guys who, definitely like, I mean, who hasn't felt great about rostering, Chris Boucher or Andre Drummond on the Lakers? So
yeah, it's never gone wrong before.
Oh, never, ever. So who are your most rostered centers on FanDuel?
Yeah, so I know Drummond, and then Rudy Gobert and Chris Boucher are both kind of split there, but I have 50% Drummond. I basically couldn't stomach going even more than that. I wanted to. I really, really wanted to, but I capped him. I just said, you know what, I'll roll with half of him there and half of him and everything else, and I'll see what happens.
And then I'm kind of curious here, just because I was looking through my lineups, where did the ownership come out on Isaiah Hartenstein? Is 18% owned on DraftKings right now. On FanDuel, he is at 32% owned. So super popular play on FanDuel now in the latest update. So what did you do with Hartenstein and the Cleveland minutes? Like we talked about Kevin Love, how we think that his minutes are trending upward. Hartenstein played more minutes last game, but it was also largely due to a blowout. So what did you do with Hartenstein? Because he's somebody who I had a lot of issue with projecting minutes for.
Yeah, so I have 10% of him. I don't want any more. I'm 1/3 under the field. We're looking at a low minutes floor for him already. Why not wait and see what happens with Detroit? Like, I don't know. I don't think I'm missing out on that much. Do I want to use up a roster spot on Isaiah Hartenstein with a crazy amount of minutes variance? No, I really don't. So I'm kind of hoping, I mean, would it surprise you if Isaiah Stewart beat Isaiah Hartenstein straight up with 2 other power forwards also there with Kevin Love and Dean Wade in the mix? No, it wouldn't surprise anybody. So I'm happy to be way, way, way over the field on Stewart and kind of live with the result.
Yeah, and I think that's a pretty key point too, is that we see this all the time, especially at this point in the season, is Hartenstein, I think he's a fine value play, right? And especially for cash games, I would play him on FanDuel just because the ownership is so high. But for GPPs, I don't think he's a bad points per dollar play, but the odds that a better points per dollar play open up later in the slate is fairly significant, especially because we see so many guys get ruled out at this point of the season. So that's something else. I have, like you, I have right around 10% exposure to Hartenstein. And it's not even that I have him projected poorly. I have him for around 25 fantasy points. I don't think he plays quite as many minutes as he played last game, but he's just getting to be a pretty popular play. And I think better plays are going to open up later in the day that people just aren't going to be on. Isaiah Stewart potentially being one of them. Maybe somebody random gets ruled out that we aren't considering now. Wouldn't be the first time it's happened in NBA DFS, especially not at this point of the season. So that is something that has me off Hartenstein for sure. But something that ties into this, Hartenstein, do you have him even projected well today, or do you think that the minutes won't be there for him?
I mean, within context of the slate, he's fine. I've got him projected decently well. I've got him just over 25 over on FanDuel. Obviously, that's fantastic at 4K. But as I said, I think that the opportunity, like what would you be projecting Stewart if you got Mason Plumlee off the floor? It's also going to be within 3 or 4 of him, even if you do get Plumlee in that lineup. So I don't feel like I'm missing out on a whole heck of a lot there. And there are 3 evening games with the Clippers involved. You just never know.
All right, guys, don't forget, we do have lock in 5 minutes, but Eric and I are not going anywhere. We're going to be sticking around for 30 minutes to talk about Jock Market. And Jock Market, just a different way to play daily fantasy sports, as opposed to just building lineups around the salaries or anything like that. Instead, we're bidding on players as if it's a stock market. We're bidding on IPO prices. And then based on how they score, how high they finish in terms of relative to other players on the slate, you get a return on that investment on the IPO price you made. So go download the Jock Market app so you can follow along with Eric and I. We do the 30-minute show after this. You can outbid us, make fun of us in the YouTube chat, all that. It's always fun. So download the Jock Market app and also use the promo code Awesemo20 and you get a $20 deposit on your $20 bonus on your first deposit. So go check that out. And you could also play for free. Let's see if we had We do have a super chat here from H3 Art of Pax. He left us a super chat, but there's no question in there. So if you do have a question that you wanted to associate with that and you weren't just leaving us a kind super chat, then at me so that I could answer the question, because as of now, I don't know what the question you wanted to ask was. I will now dive into our premium Slack chat and get into some of the questions here. Middleton or Levine, DraftKings single entry from Iron Maiden 2. He says he already has $2 in his lineup.
I mean, I'm so much higher on Middleton, just from a flat, like just a projection. I think I was getting, so I have 190 lineups over on DK. I have like 4%. I'm a little bit under on Levine right now. 8K is still fine, but it's a completely different situation there with Vooch in the lineup. And I'm still waiting for that price to adjust a little bit more manageable on FanDuel.
Yeah, he's come way down on FanDuel, hasn't really on DraftKings yet. I don't have exposure to Levine today, and I don't think it's optimal to be playing that many bucks today just because the prices are kind of expensive. I assume that he already has Drew Holiday and Bobby Portis. I don't have an issue pairing Portis with either of them, but Drew Holiday, Chris Middleton, and Portis all together on DraftKings, that could be a little tough for me, but I'm not going to tell him to totally rebuild his lineup with 2.5 minutes left until lock here.
Why not?
Because Eric, I guess I'm just nicer than you, so I just don't want to.
That is exactly what it is. That's a fact. Everybody knows that. Mean Eric, that's me.
Yep, for sure. Fantasy Wiz, Garland and Paul George, or Dame and Zach LaVine. This is on FanDuel now, where Zach LaVine totally different play than he is on DraftKings.
Agreed. Yeah, I'm going with the first one there.
So that would be Darius Garland and Paul George. I agree with you. I like Paul George quite a bit for this slate. Mr. Moneybags, who is asking us a question, Alex Caruso and Andre Drummond, or Malachi Flynn and Chris Boucher. That is Malachi Flynn and Chris Boucher for me, no doubt.
Yeah. And I mean, I like the Drummond side of it. So on a 2-center site, just throw him in the mix there. Caruso, I'm just not, I don't ever really like making the play. Like, what's the ceiling there? Like, that's my biggest thing with Caruso. I like him as a basketball player from a real life perspective, but can't really do it on this slate.
Here's what I do like a little bit about Caruso. It's kind of a similar type of situation with, like the inverse of you playing Isaiah Stewart, though. I don't think very many people are going to be on Caruso. Let's see, what is his latest ownership?
He was double digit owned is what I saw earlier today. And yeah, I just kind of wrote him off.
15%. I actually have him projected fairly well though. And
okay.
It's not that I have a ton of Caruso, but he's in my player pool. I'm slightly overweight to the field for him for this reason. Let's say that, because also I did do the same thing you did in some lineups where I have placeholders of Isaiah Stewart in case Mason Plumlee gets ruled out. But let's say that Isaiah Stewart doesn't end up becoming as viable of an option Mason Plumlee plays. I don't mind that I got some of Alex Caruso earlier, just because I think that he's still a viable value option. So I didn't go crazy with him, but I mean, he's in about 15% of my lineups now, just because I do have him as a good points per dollar play. And just on the chance that we don't get value that opens up earlier, I don't mind having Caruso taking up some spots. It's not somebody I want to go like crazy on, but that's why I want him on.
Yeah, that's the right thing to say. I always get worried because I never know the context of which somebody's asking me a 1-for-1, where it's like, oh, Caruso's in my one lineup that I'm making today. And I'm like, no, don't do that. Play more lineups and just have like 15% Caruso and you'll live. Like for me, that would be the route if I was on Caruso. I have like 5%, I think, on FanDuel.
All right, so we have one quick super chat to get to, then we could start the Jock Market portion of the show from Darren Unger. FanDuel question, Malachi Flynn, Svi Mykhailiuk, Andre Drummond, or Dennis Schroeder, Josh Jackson, Chris Boucher. For me, that would be the Flynn and Andre Drummond side, and Svi, who's a vastly different play on FanDuel and DraftKings.
Yep, agreed. Front one.
All right, here we are. We are now at the draft.
Ding, 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 ding.
Ding, 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 yeah. Oh!
On
oh, my God. Look at Jordan. I wasn't sure that Jordan was gonna have the sound effect. I really like that you did the sound effect there, because I was like, there's no way Jordan's gonna have it, but Jordan just going above and beyond at his producer duties. This is
the eyebrow. Look at the. So we're looking at him just in the Zoom screen where he's kind of like down here, and it's like,
yeah, what is he doing under that desk?
I don't know, but it was fantastic. It was wow. This guy, Laffy is 100% correct. We need producer cam. So badly.
By the way, this is why Jordan Klein's the best in the business, because it's the uncertainty, right? I don't know if we're going to get the sound drop of the bells or not. We got it this week, and oh man, was it exciting. But guys, this is the Jock Market portion of the show. No reason to go anywhere, even though the FanDuel DraftKings part of the show has ended. We got 29 minutes to talk about the Jock Market here, and for all we know, we could get everybody ruled out in the next 29 minutes. It would not be unprecedented. We've seen Paul George. He's a key part of both Eric and I's lineups today. We have seen disasters with Paul George during the Jock Market show today. So definitely don't want to go anywhere. I read out before the promo code. If you use the promo code Awesemo20 on your first deposit at Jock Market, you do get a $20 bonus on your initial deposit. So that is definitely something to use. And if you're unsure of how much you should be bidding on these individual players on their IPO pricing, we have projections up on Awesemo.com. You go check it out. We show how many points each player is projected for, and then what the fair IPO price is. So, Eric, have you looked at that or not?
I've not looked at it yet.
Okay. Which player for today's slate do you think has the highest fair IPO price on Jock Market?
Luka Doncic. The highest fair?
The highest fair IPO price.
Wouldn't it be Luka Doncic?
It is listed as not Luka Doncic right now, but that seems like it should be. It is Luka for all intents and purposes. It's Luka at $16.50. So
there we go.
Luka is the number one guy, and then I'm pulling this up right now. Where is the current bidding at Luka? Luka is currently at $13.18 as his fair market price. That is somebody who I would want to be certainly above what that number is right now. So I'm going to place a bid on Luka right now.
Let's fire it up. Oh, it's good to be back in the Jock Market here. Let's fire it up. I was going to say last week worked out pretty well again, I think. It's 2 winning weeks for me in a row. Oh, I just accidentally went to the MLB market, which you should also do. It's fantastic. There is an evening slate for things. I didn't even look at that. All I did was stack the Twins today. They have 10 runs. That makes me happy.
There you go. Oh, I know. I have no clue how my baseball lineups are doing right now, but I was on the Twins a little bit too, so hopefully well. All right, I bid on Luka. I am currently winning bids on Luka, so I'm pretty excited about that. Are there any players that you have bids on that you've either won or been outbid on since?
No, not yet here. I'm getting going. So this is the nice part about having this half-hour show. We get to kind of like go through some of the plays. It's going to translate. I know that you're not somebody who necessarily likes to hedge by any means. People that you're on DFS, you're probably going to be on in the Jock Market. I do think there is an opportunity though, based on what the prices are. I mean, it's a price numbers game where, a guy like, I don't know who's down here. Isaiah Stewart right now going for 284. That's kind of a bigger number than what I was expecting to see for him. So it might be difficult for me to get there. We also got the official Giannis out, which is good. That's fantastic. Don't have to adjust for anything. I think Josh Jackson at 277 as well. Somebody that I've talked a lot about. I think there's going to be a lot of shots available for him. I'm going to put a bid on him, kind of see where I can get. Yeah, let's put a $3 bid on him.
All right, so let's talk about these Bucks guys now. Giannis officially out. We were expecting that to be the case. He was listed as doubtful, officially out. Maybe a little bit of uncertainty. People maybe panic a little bit when we get into the start of the games and guys are listed as probable, not officially ruled in, or guys who were doubtful, not officially ruled out. No longer an issue. Giannis is out. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about some of these guys. Chris Middleton, a fair market price, fair IPO price of $8.90. Let's see where Middleton is. He's at 807 right now. So a little bit of value in Middleton. I'll try to buy some shares of him here and see if I could win something.
That is going to last for all of 3 minutes. Enjoy that. Maybe 30 seconds. Maybe 30 seconds.
And
I think they're going to be popular targets.
And It's gone. All right, let's move to Jrue Holiday. Jrue Holiday. He has a fair IPO price of $7.50. You know what's something kind of funny about this? Jrue Holiday, higher salary on FanDuel and DraftKings. We have projected him for less of an IPO price on Jock Market. So let's see what everybody else is doing with him. $7.95. So Jrue Holiday already priced above what his fair IPO price is according to Alex's projection. So therefore, not somebody that I'm looking to make a move on. Anybody that I'm going to look up Portis right now. Anybody that you have just placed a bid on?
I just put one on Malachi Flynn there for a second. It's already gone. So that was hurtful. Thank you. That's part of the fun of this. So Norman Powell did get ruled in. He's only at 312. What's his fair IPO price? Isn't he already officially in? I feel like I saw that a second
By the way,
ago.
we did get a question here from Curtis Bailey, who's asking a quick question. He goes, you guys do know that buying from other players right in the Jock Market, the IPO closed at 7:30. No, the IPO, I believe, closes at 8 o'clock today.
Yep.
Isn't
you
that
got
correct?
a little extra time. Yep.
Yeah, unless I'm missing something. Let's see. So I guess the
it is live. The NBA market is live right now. That's why. Yep, it's live right now. Because I just put in the order. So you're going to have to be able to order to be able to get them in general. That's why the numbers are higher than we were expecting there on the front end. So now we get to talk a little game theory of things. So that's
total,
kind of fun.
total mishap by Eric and I right there. Who, because by the way, so the other slates that we've done this, or at least recently, we've had the Jock Market has been still in the IPO period before we started. But anyway, I ended up. Oh, okay. So I just placed an order for Luka. I didn't actually get any shares of him.
So I just got $4 for Josh Jackson, just fired that up. So I got 4 shares of that. So that's going to be a fun one to front load. So here's let's talk a little rotation here as well. Like when the opportune time to be able to sell a certain player is. If you're watching a game, when you're kind of like, you don't want to be looking at selling a guy like Josh Jackson. Let's say, I'm assuming he starts tonight, but let's just say he doesn't. I would not be looking to panic unload it. I would be waiting kind of like a little bit later in the afternoon because he's going to like be starting in the, it'll be nighttime for you on the East Coast, but through that first rotation of the first quarter, everybody will be freaking out, trying to unload him, do whatever else. That might be a good time to actually come in and buy a guy like Josh Jackson in that scenario. Other bench players, just targeting them in general, as people who have them see 0 fantasy points accruing, they might try to unload them. That might be a good strategy to be looking at as well. Andre Drummond right now, what's his fair IPO price?
Andre Drummond has a fair IPO price of $4.60. So let's see where the bids and the ask are on him. The ask for Drummond right now is $7.07. So that is pretty rich when considering that we have him projected as a fair IPO price of $4.60. So I guess also how many fantasy points does Alex have him projected here? He is Drummond projected for 30 fantasy points. The scoring is a little bit different on Jock Market than FanDuel and DraftKings. I think in my projections, though, and I didn't make my own projections for Jock Market, I'd probably be above that 30 number, but even so, not enough to the point that I'd want to get up to the $7 ask for Drummond. Now, let's see, of the games, have any of the games started yet? Of course not. So I was wondering if there was anybody who's off to a good or bad start. I was going to say, let's try to highlight some of these guys, but
it'd be way too convenient.
9 minutes after lock. Why would the games have started then? So here's a fun over under. National TV game, Lakers Heat. What time does it actually tip off?
7:20. So yeah, it'd be 10:20 your time.
No. The game.
What time does it tee off? What time? So it's 5 o'clock tip out here, 8 o'clock your time. It'll probably tip off 20 minutes after it.
So that would be 10 minutes from now.
Yes, 10 minutes from now.
All right, and then the other one, Bulls Raptors, not a national TV game, but was scheduled to tip off 10 minutes ago. Has not started yet. So when do we think we have that? I'm trying to figure out when we'll be able to try to buy low on some of these guys who are struggling early that we missed out on because we're doofuses.
Well, not doofuses. Don't say that. So no, this is good though, because this is another element. Like we can't just always talk about the front end element of being able to bid. Like I think the strongest time to be able to get into the Jock Market is certainly during the IPO period. So we're a little bit behind in that regard, but part of the fun is being able to adjust on the fly, to be able to go into the daily market and to be able to buy and react as games are going. So we can talk through scenarios of times to be able to get in on it. it. There was a situation with Trae Young 2 weeks ago, and I can talk about that for a second. Like, we were both high on Trae Young 2 weeks ago. We both got a bunch of shares of him. I think that was the one player that we both ended up getting from that situation. I ended up seeing that they was going to blow out that game. They were up 22, and somebody still had a bid in that was a little bit lower than what I was hoping to unload it for. But I knew for a fact that there was no way that Trae Young was going to finish as a top 5 player. And the pricing, the bid that was out there for him was basically as if he was like the 6th highest scorer of the entire night. So I locked in profit doing it that way. Had I been holding on to it, he finished 12th on that night in terms of fantasy points because of the blowout. And so basically locking yourself in for a profit, if you recognize blowout, if you could recognize a certain situation where somebody might still have the bid out there, those are the times to really be active on the jock market in the trading phase, because that's just basically how you're going to long-term be able to win, is locking in and accounting for whatever the game script ends up being.
And then to add on to that, also, there could be guys who we expect to play more in blowouts that could get blowout run that would then potentially become a little bit more interesting. So if I remember correctly, that game that you're talking about, Trae Young, he scored something like 30 fantasy points in the first quarter. Both of you were high. Both of us had bids on him for Jock Market that we'd won. And both of us were overweights to field on him on FanDuel and DraftKings. We're both like, oh man, this is going great. It was also Russell Westbrook night, where I think the two of us, we used a bunch of value and then we paid up for Westbrook and Trae Young. Both of them were, if I remember this like correctly, both of them were doing really, really well early. And we were like, oh, this is going to be money for us. And then Trae Young just barely plays in the second half because of the blowout. But the point being, yeah, pay attention to blowouts, because there's definitely edges to be had based on that. And we have action. The Chicago Bulls, Toronto Raptors, the game has started. Raptors up 6-0 early. The first points being scored here. A couple of points by OG Anunoby, a couple of points for Pascal Siakam. Chris Boucher in the first minute of the game, 3 rebounds and a block. So,
my dude, my absolute dude.
Chris Boucher off to a torrid start. So let's see.
I only ended up with 15% on FanDuel. That's sad.
Let's see. Right. Chris Boucher. Where could we find him?
He's going. The ask is 1276. What's the word? Pass.
Yes,
pass is the word.
All right. So let's see. Chris Boucher. The fair IPO price we had projected for him was $5.20. Now, the projection we had for him in terms of total points was 31.54 points. Now, the way that I would look at this is he scored, 5 fantasy points in the first minute of the game. He's somebody who scores about a fantasy point per minute around there. So I would say that we now expect him to score about 4 more fantasy points. Just because he scores a bunch of points in the first minute of the game, that doesn't mean all of a sudden he's a 3.5 fantasy point per minute player for the rest of the game. So if I was just look at this, I would say, you know what? Now I'm expecting somewhere in the neighborhood of like 35, 36 fantasy points from Chris Boucher. That would probably make his fair IPO price somewhere in the neighborhood of $6. So based on now that we have him going for, where was the number on Boucher? The ask on Boucher is $11. Little rich, little rich, a little bit of an overreaction, maybe. Not that DFS players overreact to early results of games, because
first time ever.
I will guarantee if I go into our premium Slack chat right now, people are saying Chris Boucher log off. Like I'll guarantee that is. Let's see. Oh, yep, we already have right there. No, Boucher not tonight. People are already sweating Chris Boucher a minute into the game. So yeah, every once in a while people overreact. Let's see if anybody's off to a slow start that maybe we.
In their defense, he has 13.8 on FanDuel in less than 3 minutes. That's pretty. All right. That's good output, I would say.
All right. So now Boucher, maybe a little bit more juice to his fantasy. But maybe you know what, I was right.
3-pointer.
You know what, I was right. Chris Boucher isn't a 3 fantasy point per minute player tonight. He's a 4 fantasy point per minute player today. What was I thinking? Chris Boucher is about to play 25 minutes and score over 100 fantasy points. Let's see who's struggling to start this game. Gary Trent, 0 fantasy points. Malachi Flynn, 3 minutes of the game, just 1 assist. That's fine. But all right, Gary Trent, he had a fair IPO price of $2.10 with him scoring no fantasy points in the first few minutes of the game. What are people doing with Gary Trent? Gary Trent still has an ask of 435. People are bidding 195 on him. A little bit too much for me with Gary Trent scoring 0 fantasy points 3 minutes into the game and us only projecting him for a fair IPO price of 210. So of the games going on, let's scroll through this, Eric. Is there anybody you see that is going for a bid that's just that has an ask of just a reasonable dollar amount? Not nothing like Chris Boucher, who's now going for 13.
Yeah, that's not rational. I guess maybe. Yeah, not going to be OG. Not going to be going that direction. What are some of these other bulls? So Satoransky's going for 430. That's too high. Thaddeus Young, 586 is a large number to be paying for him too. A lot of these numbers are just a little bit too high. I think if you were to take one guy, I think there's some minute certainty with Patrick Williams. If you were to go to like 250 for him right now, the bid's 240, the ask is 250. What was his fair IPO price? I bet it was closer to like $2, maybe a little bit lower, but at least there's a minute security for him, regardless of what this game script ends up being. Let's see. Thad Young was 3-4.
Patrick Williams had a fair IPO price of 60 cents. So
that's bad.
Yeah, it's
very bad. We don't want to do that.
Not great, Captain Eric.
Well, I'm looking down here. I'm trying to find somebody that's in the active one that has a number that's like remotely comparable to what their fair IPO price is going to be. I mean, Lauri Markkanen, we saw have some kind of a upside there again recently. He's going for $3, but that's just going to be too expensive. It's going to be tough to get to some guys until we see some change. Like we got to see somebody sit down for a little bit, like Chris Boucher. Maybe I think Chris Boucher is probably out of touch to be buying today. Like you're not going to get Chris Boucher at any point here today, unless you're bidding a large number, regardless of how the rest of this game goes. So I wouldn't even try to go that direction. Zach LaVine's down to 824 ask. What could his, like, he at least has the upside to maybe be a guy to jump into that grouping. 730 for a fair IPO price. So that's within $1 of the fair IPO. If you wanted to take a shot on a share of him, that would be fine. But yeah, otherwise I don't see anybody else that I really want to be going to yet. I need to see a little bit more of that game.
All right, we do have news here. Trey Burke playing. Maxi Kleber is playing. Those were two guys whose statuses were uncertain heading into today. With Maxi Kleber playing, is that going to change anything for you with Dallas?
Not a single thing.
No, me either. And we also have starting line for the Oklahoma City Thunder, nothing unexpected. Teo Maledon, Svi, Kenrich Williams, Pokashevsky, and Moses Brown. So the expected starting lineup there, nothing too crazy happening. Nothing that's going to cause Eric and I to panic and have to change everything.
To go completely Paul George on the world.
We did have somebody here. I answered in the YouTube chat, but somebody here was asking, who do you think is safer? You were a big Isaiah Stewart guy today, but who do you think is a safer play? Hartenstein or Isaiah Stewart?
I mean, it's obviously Hartenstein, but Isaiah Stewart's 3,700 on FanDuel. Like, the opportunity cost of guys 3,700 who already has a minutes bump with Jeremy Grant off the floor, and now has the upside of being the best play on the entire slate that I have in bulk already. Like, that's what I'm looking at. This is tournaments. This isn't like me saying that Isaiah Hartenstein's a bad play or whatever, but if you were to play him in cash, I think that's probably the right route to go with him. But the upside of Isaiah Stewart is massive if you get Plumlee out.
Yeah, and I agree with that, especially if you're playing cash games on FanDuel. I mean, the last ownership projection we had, he was projecting for over 30% ownership on FanDuel. So if you're ever close in between two players, and by the way, like we said earlier, I mean, ownership projections are free on Awesemo.com today. So if you are in between two players for a cash game, you're looking for safety. If there's a massive ownership difference between the two, go with the guy with more ownership for cash games, just because you're going to kind of box yourself in with the field, and you don't have to worry about if Hardenstein has a big game, then you just lose because everybody played him in cash games. So in a cash game type situation where somebody like Hardenstein is just super, super popular, you play him in cash. All right. So now we have the Lakers Heat game is underway. Andre Drummond, a minute into the game with 1.5 fantasy points. He's got an assist. Do we start victory lapping yet?
We are on the board. Woo! Yeah, I feel great. You know, I did tell the people 5,200 on FanDuel, just play Andre Drummond. I am the sharpest analyst at Awesemo.com.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the kind of production you're looking for from Andre Drummond. 1 assist in the first minute of the game.
And a bucket. We're on the board.
There we go.
On the board.
Andre Drummond or sign off. If you did not roster Andre Drummond today, he's clearly already established himself as the best center play on FanDuel for the night. Let's see what the IPO not the IPO, but the bidding. Where are we at with Andre Drummond? What is the ask for him? Andre Drummond, people asking for 807, bid at 440. If anybody was able to get a bid on him at 440, that'd be pretty impressive. I don't think anybody's giving up Drummond for that kind of price, but decent start for Drummond. I would not be willing to pay $8.07 to match the ask on him right now. We only had him projected for a fair IPO price of $4.60. So no reason to go to try to place a bid on Drummond at those kind of asks. Let's see who else is off to a good or bad start in the Lakers Heat game. How about some key guys? Jimmy Butler. We are 2.5 minutes into the game. Jimmy Butler is no fantasy points. That to me is an interesting potential buy low guy. So Jimmy Butler.
Malachi Flynn up to 7.2.
So Jimmy Butler had a fair IPO price of $9.50. He scored no fantasy points in the first 2 minutes of the game. So that would probably bring it somewhere closer to $9. The ask room is still $9.51, but I'm going to throw in a bid on Jimmy Butler. I'll just go $8 and see if anybody bites on that.
Like it. I award you no fantasy points, and may God have mercy on your soul.
Let's see if I get anything there. Can't win if you don't try.
Oh, the other thing for Jock Market as well, reacting to an injury immediately. That happened, what was it, I think that was the one that happened last week. I can't remember the exact situation, but if you're watching a game, especially these nationally televised TNT, you don't even need the NBA League Pass, which I would recommend getting anyway if you're playing NBA DFS, because it's really fun and I just love basketball. But if you're watching like the nationally televised games and somebody goes down in an instant, you can swoop in, grab somebody, and you're ready to go. Obviously, it sucks when you're the person who has the guy who gets hurt, but there is a way to make up for it like almost instantly by getting on Jock Market and like overpaying for a guy in a certain situation where it might open up. Like if you were to have Levine go down, you know, the amount of usage and opportunity for Vooch would be through the roof, and I would be willing to overpay for him this early in that game.
Here's by the way, people were really asking the Hartenstein questions here. Somebody asked Dean Wade or Isaiah Hartenstein. For me, that is Isaiah. People have been rostering Dean Wade in DFS like he's Dwayne Wade. Like I think people just see the D Wade, and I don't know if there's some kind of bias that goes into it. But I mean, I
can basically tell you off of their FanDuel profile picture that they are not related.
That is an astute observation by you. So I ended up with 15% exposure to Isaiah Hartenstein, and then I have one lineup with Dean Wade right now. So if you have Dean Wade in one lineup, I wouldn't say you have to get him out, but not a priority play for me. I prefer Hartenstein. So also somebody here saying about Hartenstein's cheaper. Wade usually gets more minutes. Yeah, but there's so much more substantial upside in Hartenstein because he's such a better points per minute fantasy producer. Like Wade has had some games recently. Pull this up.
Dude, Hartenstein I think is good. Like I think he's actually like probably good at basketball, like a functional guy. Like if you were to have not gone to Cleveland, like if he was like the backups, the Lakers I'm sure could use a guy like him right now coming off the bench, playing 20 minutes, 18 minutes. But I think he might actually be decent.
I'd rather they play Marc Gasol over Isaiah Hartenstein, but it doesn't look like they're playing Gasol either. But so yeah, on the minutes for Dean Wade, 38 minutes last game, and he scored 17 DraftKings points. Does he get minutes? Yeah, but it doesn't really matter if you don't do all that much with them. So, I mean, the last two starts, 38 minutes, 17 fantasy points, 31 minutes, 14.75 DraftKings points. I did have one outlier game against the 76ers where he ended up scoring 32 DraftKings points. But for the most part, you look at his recent games, there's a whole bunch of games where he's playing, over 30 minutes, and then he just scores well under a fantasy point per minute. So, I'd rather go to Hartenstein, who I just view as a much better fantasy producer. And if he happens to get those minutes, there's a chance that he goes off. He's scoring over a fantasy point per minute this year. So you give Hartenstein 26 minutes and you're looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of 35 fantasy points.
Which we are not hoping for between the two of us.
No, but relative to Dean Wade.
19 minutes and a lot of inefficiency.
Relative to Dean Dwayne Wade, I'd rather have Hartenstein.
Dean Dwayne Wade, that's awesome.
All right, let's see what else. Who else? Oh, by the way, the Heat already up 19-10 on the Lakers. I'm gonna actually pull my bid on Jimmy Butler now, just because I realized that there's way too much risk for a blowout in this game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's already up to 9. They have nobody playing that's any good for the Lakers. That's fun. I keep refreshing, trying to update, because I was thinking maybe I'd get to some that, because Chicago just went on a nutso little run there. They're up 23-19 now on Toronto. So some of these second unit dudes are playing pretty well. But Satoransky's still garbage. Can't bid on him. Zach LaVine started to get going a little bit there. He's up to 13.5, but his ask is up to 1099 now, whereas he was just at like 950. So I'm trying to track this. I'm trying to see. It's kind of like double Dutch, where you're trying to like figure in like when to jump in. It's been a while. That was a terrible jump rope analogy, but you know what? So be it. I'm trying for you.
When is the last time you jump roped?
Oh God, it's been a hot second. I jump rope individually a couple of years ago, maybe back I was doing like workout classes and stuff where you were jumping rope and doing whatever. But the double Dutch, the long rope thing, like elementary school probably.
Yeah, I just meant in general. I thought there was a chance I get some crazy entry, like, oh, like a couple hours ago, and I'd be like, oh, nice. Like I thought there would have been a spin-off there.
Here, let me pull it out.
Yeah, yeah. It just is like you just have a pink jump rope that you pull out, and it's got your name engraved on it or something, kind of like
deflecting off the pink chair. I'm just trying to be you. I am Greg number 2. Let it be known.
Well, that would be even weirder if you pulled out the jump rope and had my name engraved in it. It's like, I got this for you.
I knew you before, Awesemo.
Let's see if we have any questions or anything. Here we have a late swap related question here from Fantasy Wiz, who's asking Dame and that game's already started. Never mind, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, can't do it.
Yep, doesn't matter. He was asking LaVine was in one of the sides. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, you got the 1 8 o'clock. The Cleveland OKC game is the one that locks up next, and then Milwaukee Dallas. And I'm hoping before the Milwaukee game, this is kind of like the window of opportunity where it'll tell me what I need to do with a lot of these Bucks. We'll get the Portis news, make sure that he's in the starting lineup, and then I'll be able to hopefully have that news on Mason Plumlee before that game, because then you have 4 total games to be able to swap in and out of. That's kind of what I'm hoping for.
All right, so here's a general question now we talked about blowouts a little bit before, Trae Young, how that applied to the last slate we did here. The Heat are up 20-10, just 4.5 minutes into the game against the Lakers. Is there anybody here that from a blowout perspective, you think could really benefit to the point that you might want to jump the gun and try to get a bid on right now?
I mean, I'm not going to bet on like Kendrick Nunn. Would that kind of be where we're looking? I mean, how thin are we talking? Like fair IPO price of 1 cent, I think would be the correct way of looking at it. I think the minimum that anybody is on the board right now out of the 80 players in the pool, the minimum would be $1 that you're bidding on anybody. We have fair IPO prices that are underneath it. We said 60 cents earlier. I mean, Tyler Hero would be all right, but he's going for 428. So that's probably going to be a hard pass for me as well. I don't really see anybody that I would really want to be jumping to immediately. I think I would want to kind of watch a little bit more of that game. And I think Tyler Hero is the only guy in the pool. So you have 80 players out of 14 teams today. So there's less than what is available for DFS. But Goran Dragic, I think, would also make some sense as kind of a guy who could go out there, get extended run in that fourth quarter, but already going to be playing as well. But he's up to 413 as well. I think I would take the Tyler Hero side of it if I had to take one of them.
All right, guys, that is just about the end of our time here. But here's what you're going to do, right? You're going to go download the Jock Market app, because even if you're unsure, you can play it for free. There are free contests. You can see what it's all about. And then next Thursday, you can follow along with Eric and I. If you do feel so inclined to make a deposit, promo code Awesemo20, you get a $20 bonus on your first deposit. So that is also something to check out. A little bit of free money, right? A little bit of free money. Nothing better than that. Can't hurt anybody. You start Jock Market already. You're already up $20 if you use the promo code Awesemo20. Also, we're going to be having fair IPO pricing projections on the Jock Market on Awesemo.com for the rest of the season. So that always helps. That is something to check out. But other than that, that's going to do it for Eric and I. Everybody, good luck tonight and have a good night.